It's Monday, April 7th, 2025. It's not yet tax day, but it's the knee jerks day. Well, I know it's a lousy segue. It's all I could do at the top of my head. It's time for the Knee Jerks podcast with Eno, Nick, and Big Al. And of course, we have a special guest with us this week. But let's get the introductions out of the way and we'll get to the birthday game, and then we'll start talking some hoops a little bit later. But first off, I'm Al Beaton, longtime Detroit-based podcaster. Joining me, as always, is the man who knows a lot of things about a lot of things, has a Substack that you must read. Today he wrote about Alex Ovechkin and Wayne Gretzky and Gordie Howe. It was a very interesting take on the scoring record, but that would be, of course, Mr. Greg Eno. How things, Greg?
Thank you, Al, for that plug. I am Greg Eno from my Out-of-Bounds Substack, gregeno.substack.com. Please subscribe to me. I'll be in your inbox every Monday. As Al mentioned, today's take was about in the wake of Alex Ovechkin breaking Wayne Gretzky's goal-scoring record. I kind of expanded it a little bit and talked about the professional record, professional hockey record that Gordie Howe holds of 975, and how that shakes out, given that 174 of those goals were scored in what I say was the inferior WHA, and that we should probably maybe put an asterisk next to 975, but that's something for you to read. gregeno.substack.com is the place to go there. Follow me on Twitter at Greg Eno. Follow me on Blue Sky at Greg Eno there as well. And I'll let you introduce Mr. Nick before we get to everything else.
Well, if I must. Nick just goes, oh, good Lord, what have I got myself into? Of course, our West Coast correspondent, who lives where it rains, I think, 360 days a year. Maybe it's every time I look at the Pacific Northwest, it seems like it's cold, damp, and tech bro filled. But that would be, of course, Mr. Nick Milanovich. Nick, how are you doing?
Oh, not too bad. I don't know if I hold your same feelings except for the contempt for the tech bros.
Yeah, there you go.
But actually, as soon as I got on this call, the rain stopped, and then sun was sort of peeking out through the clouds here. But yeah. Oh, and it was actually really interesting last week because the Tigers were here in town, and I happened to be walking through Seattle and the well-known Pike Place Market and saw a lot of old English D's walking around, looking at fish being thrown around, and all the.
Yeah, is that a law or something that every time a broadcast team comes to town, they have to go to the Pike Fish Market and throw fish and catch fish? It's like a law.
Well, they do that actually all the time for tourists. And
right.
So that's kind of one of the big attractions here. So.
Wow.
People go to.
Well, we need to see you do it, Nick.
It's only the workers over there throw the fish.
You can catch fish.
Huh? No, they throw it and catch it, with each other, and I think.
Oh, you can make it like yourself, like your Lombardi, and pick one off.
There you go.
Yeah, see, I'm just annoying Nick with this tech bro Seattle stuff. So let's just move on. Yeah, obviously we have.
You're not going to annoy me as much as the tech bros themselves. So
yeah, there you go. All right, before we get to our special guest, we have a lot of NBA to talk about with them. So might give you an idea of who's with us today, or if you're watching our video, you already know. I think, Greg, let's get the birthday game out of the way, at least a start, and then we'll cut to our special guest.
Absolutely. Before we get to everything that's on the menu, we're going to play a game we like to call Whose Birthday Is It, Maestro? Everybody knows how we play this game by now. I'll give Al and Nick a clue or two or three of an individual whose birthday it is today in the world of sports. And if either of those gentlemen can correctly guess this person within the first two clues, today's prize is a year's supply of Puddin' Pops. Puddin' Pops is the
Weren't those canceled along with Bill Cosby? What was it? Remember those damn commercials? Good Lord, Greg, you got a deep cut there. So,
I do.
Right.
That was. Yeah, it's tough coming up with these. I've been doing how many years have I been trying to come up with these deep cuts?
way too long, but yes.
Yeah. This person made his name in the world of football. He was born on this date in 1954, so he's 71 years old today. He is a Hall of Famer. Played a majority of his career, vast majority of his career, on offense in the NFC East. I will say that. A dynamic player and a former Heisman Trophy winner.
Oh, Heisman Trophy. I had a couple ideas, and he threw that monkey wrench called the Heisman Trophy into it. Heisman Trophy winner played mostly in the NFC East. Would have won the Heisman around the
76. Won the Heisman 76.
76.
Dorsett.
Dorsett, very good. Tony Dorsett, very good.
Well done, Nick.
Very, very impressive. Yes.
Well, you said Heisman. In those days, it was most likely a running back.
Right.
Yeah.
True. Very
And
true.
nobody else.
And a lot of Heisman winners back then basically did not have good NFL careers either. He was one of the earlier ones. Yeah.
He went to Pitt, obviously.
Yep.
He was known as Tony Dorsett, and then I'm not sure early in his NFL career or maybe in his senior year in college, he wanted to be known as Dorsett. So he was Tony Dorsett, even though I always knew him as Tony Dorsett. So, for a period of time. But Tony D is 71 today. He finished his career briefly 1 year with the Denver Broncos. That's why I said he was mostly in the NFC East. Of course, he played for the Cowboys. 77, 87 was a Super Bowl champion, an NFL Offensive Rookie of the Year in 77, and basically took over Dwayne Thomas's old number 33 and did it more than proud. And Tony Dorsett is now 71, and happy birthday, Tony.
All right.
Right on.
All right. With that, I guess, Greg, it's time to introduce one of our favorite guests. He's here to talk a little hoops. I'll let you get the introductions out of the way.
Does he need an introduction? That's the question.
It's only fair,
I don't know if he does. I don't know.
I'm feeling at home. I've been here enough times.
Yeah.
I can't think of anything else to say about Siddy Hall that I haven't said already. And but he is here. He's our NBA stats guru. And why is he here? Well, we are getting really close to the NBA playoffs, of which the Pistons are a part for the first time in 2019. And
meaningful basketball, yes.
Meaningful basketball. And unlike 2019, they have a shot.
Yeah.
I think of winning a series, or at least giving. They won't get swept. I can guarantee that they won't get swept.
Yeah.
So Siddy's here to talk about. We've got some playoff. We haven't 100% locked in the seeding yet, but we're pretty sure that they'll probably finish 6th or 5th. So they'll probably either play the Knicks or the Pacers, and either of those series I think would be bloodbaths, especially the Pacers. So Siddy's here, and he's with us. And thank you for being here, my friend. And how you doing?
Doing well. Thanks for inviting me again. I'm feeling comfortable, feeling at home here. In fact, so much so that I think maybe I'm eligible for a clothing expense account from the knee jerks. As you know, when you're internet famous, you can't wear the same thing twice.
All right, your Amex is in the mail. Yeah.
Yes, some of the knee jerks receive a
Yeah, gift certificate from Harry the Hatter or something.
There's clothes.
Yes.
Maybe you'll have to win one at the next birthday game.
Yeah, I should have. Siddy, did you know that? Did they answer that? By the way, I should have had you play that.
When you said the year 76, it finally arrived. I was going through the Rolodex. I started at Anthony Davis and was trying to move forward from there. Yeah. But the question that came to my mind though was, who handed the ball off to Tony Dorsett at Pitt? Do you remember?
Chuck Fusina?
I have a different name in my mind. Matt Cavanaugh.
Kavanaugh.
Oh, yeah.
He went on to play with the Patriots.
No, Fusina played for Penn State. Played for Penn State. That's right. You're right. Kavanaugh. Good one. It was.
And if I can go on another detour before we get into basketball about Ovechkin, I have a question about this record because for me, I don't follow hockey much anymore, but I did go to one game some years ago, and it was with the Washington Capitals. And because I've been away from the NHL for so long, what I found so peculiar about that game was that it was tied. They had overtime, 3-on-3, and everybody was skating around at half speed, and Ovechkin scored 30 seconds in. And I'm wondering, how many goals did he get from overtime, and should they count?
Oh,
it feels like
interesting. That's interesting.
Yeah.
empty netters pad the number.
Yeah. No,
3 on
that's
3s.
true. Gordy played in a time. That's absolutely true. Gordy played in a
I
time
bet
where
he
there
scored
wasn't
a
no
lot of
overtime.
those.
Yeah, no, you're right. That's a good
And
one.
Gretzky
Yes.
was not playing any, I don't think.
Well, Gretzky played during. Well, yeah, overtime was
During
introduced in '83 in the NHL.
During in the regular season.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Three,
Oh, yeah.
what 3 on 3? I mean,
Not 3-on-3. No, not 3-on-3. No. Original
yeah,
overtime
3 on
was
3
5
is a
on 5.
different animal, man.
Oh,
These
yeah.
guys
Oh,
are
for sure.
just.
Well, if you want to go in that direction, though, look at the padding that goalies wore back then compared to the padding they wear today, where they're literally brick walls in front of the net. So
That's also true.
yeah, so I guess that's why it's so hard to compare eras. And you see, I know Siddy realizes this when you talk about when people start talking about the GOATs in basketball and stuff like that, and the eras are so different.
Yeah.
It's getting harder and harder to compare stats.
Right.
Yeah, it is. You can't be too literal about it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So
So
but
Siddy's
anyway,
here-
we are at the end of this impossible season. The Pistons doing something that was beyond the imagination. Which, they just keep surprising us, right? 43 wins. I mean, did that cross anyone's mind back in September?
I was hoping for 30. It was like best case scenario. Be honest with you.
I was thinking mid-20s was the best case.
I was not an optimist, so
Yeah.
you know, I did not have a higher number than you guys, and here they are. They've been really consistent. They show up every
And
night.
had I told you guys, and had I said back in September or October and said, hey, they're going to lose Jaden Ivey on January 1st, then would you say their win total would have been? I don't think definitely wouldn't have said 43. That's for darn sure.
Well, the one thing that's been obviously different about this team compared to the past, though, is despite Ivey's injury, they have been pretty healthy. They've never had multiple injuries at the same time. Like most teams got to deal with that at some point. And also, they always have 5 guys on the floor that can play.
Right, that's true.
Comparing that to last year, that weak bench, and you know, they always got guys on the floor. You know, 5 guys. You know, they got the 2 bigs. Adding Schroeder was a great move, like you said, Greg. You know, you called it, and he has fit in nicely. Cade went out, and they had a primary ball handler, and they just don't seem to miss anybody that much. You know, on a night-to-night basis.
They went 4-2 recently without Cade.
Went 2 weeks. They seemed okay, but there was one thing that was 2 things I would point out. The defense tightened up. I saw a stat saying that since January 1st until maybe a week or 10 days ago, the Pistons had like the top defense in the league. And who arrived around that time? Ausar Thompson.
Yeah.
And in today's NBA, you know, it's not the Twin Towers anymore. It's having these guys on the perimeter that can hound. And you have him, you have Holland. There's a lot of perimeter defense. And then, you know, helping out. So you have your first line of defense. Another detail, unrelated, but I got to confess, this has been such a great season, but I was really disappointed in the Pistons game the other night. I guess it was on Saturday. They faced Memphis at home.
Yep.
And the Pistons had just clinched a playoff spot.
Right.
And it seemed like they took a night off. It seemed like the management said, hey, Jaden, you know, Duran, take a day off. Jalen, relax, just take one off. And they put in this weird starting lineup. They had Schroeder next to Cade. Cade's first game back. Beef stew in the middle. And this was a game they should have won. Memphis has been in a tailspin for a month. They were playing without Ja Morant. And it should have been a kind of a routine win when they're battling for seeding. And now they're a half game behind Milwaukee. They're going to have a home and away to finish the season against Milwaukee.
Yeah.
But I don't like this taking the foot off the gas. You know, you take the foot off the gas in May or June, you know, when your playoff run's over. And why is this important? That seeding you just mentioned.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, let me ask you guys, what do you prefer? Do you want to be the 5 seed and face the 4 and then number 1? Do you want to face Indy and then Cleveland? Or do you want to face New York and then Boston? What looks better to you?
the latter, what you just said, the New York and then Boston. To me,
What about?
I agree. I think they match up better for both teams.
Yeah.
Nick, you agree? Everyone agrees. See, I'm not. I
Yeah.
disagree. To me, I'd rather go against Indiana and Cleveland. Boston's still the favorite. I want to put that off as long as possible. And New York, they got Jalen Brunson. You don't want to deal with him for 7 games. They have Mitchell Robinson coming back from injury finally. They have, good wings that can play defense, and Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby. I feel like Foster Hewitt. They got
Foster Brooks.
They got Pat and Mitchell Robinson. I don't really want to play those guys for 7 games. I think
here's why. Okay, I'll give you my reason. I'll let Al and Nick chime in. The reason I don't want to go against Indiana is because I think that series is going to be a bloodbath, and I'm afraid that the Pistons may lose their cool in a series against the Pacers and lose their heads, especially guys like Stu, even Ron Howland. He's got a chip on his shoulder. I'm afraid that they might get baited into a type of mind game against the Pacers, because the Pacers are a very abrasive group, and they trash talk, and the teams don't like each other. And to me, I feel like that volatility might work against the Pistons in this scenario. That's why I would prefer that. That's why I would prefer to play the Knicks. I'm not sure what everybody else has to say.
I agree with you, Greg. One is that, obviously, and we have seen that a handful of times with the Pistons this year, where they just plain lose their cool. Ron Howland looks like he's ready to throw hands at the drop of a hat, and Beef Stew, he's the one guy that they really need him, and he can be so volatile at times. I'd be terrified they would lose him even for a half or something for getting ejected. And I'm also not a believer in Tom Thibodeau. I mean, talk about a guy, if he could play 4 players and that's it, he would play him. He doesn't use his bench. No, he barely uses his bench, I should say. And I think the thing with that would be I would hope that he's got an exhausted team by the end of the year, even if he is getting some injured guys back. And I just think the matchup is better. And we've seen the Pistons beat the Knicks. We've seen the Pistons beat Boston. Do I think they could beat Boston in the series? Probably not, but they could probably win a game or two. But I really do think they could beat the Knicks. How about you, Nick?
I guess my logic is just a little simpler, is that I've seen even Pistons this year have struggled way more against the Pacers. I don't even know if they beat the Pacers this year, whereas they beat the Knicks at least once and had like a better time, playing against them. So that's my simple logic to it. Whereas they struggled much more they struggled with Boston overall, but they could take a game. Who the heck's the other team now? I'm drawing a blank on. No, Cleveland. I'm thinking of the Bucks.
Well, I would also add that
Cleveland. They struggle with Cleveland. They struggle with Cleveland a lot. They pulled out that win recently, but although I don't know, that Cleveland team sort of fizzles out in the playoffs, and you could say it's because of Bernie Bickerstaff, or not JB, or it's that team makeup is maybe good for a long season run, but not good for a playoff.
Well, Boston and Cleveland are both Goliaths. It might be a moot point, but in my mind, Boston's the favorite to win it all. We've seen it many times. Teams, they've won a championship. The challenge of trying to have the best record isn't imperative anymore.
Right. Yeah.
And we see these teams, bring it down half a notch, get through the regular season. So to see Boston in the 2nd seed, don't underestimate them. They're still the team to beat. But, Cleveland is a complete team, not an easy matchup. I would just prefer to face them in the 2nd round because they're a little bit less experienced in big games. But, again, pick your poison.
You're right.
In the 1st round, though, these New York, when I think of New York, I think of intensity. Thibs has his teams. They play with great intensity, but it is a different team than last year. Last year they had Dante DiVincenzo, and they had Isaiah Hartenstein. It was a real scratch and claw team, and eventually their bodies just wore out. They made the switch this year. Hartenstein walked away in free agency, and then they brought in Karl Anthony Towns, who really changes the complexity of the team a lot. He's an offensive scorer. He's the Dirk Nowitzki of this era. A guy who's a great scorer, but at the other end, you don't want him being your hub. He can grab rebounds. He's a big body, but he's not going to anchor a great defense. But behind him, they have Mitchell Robinson, and I'm sure who is a stopper. It's kind of like, when Dirk was in Dallas, when they brought in Tyson Chandler to be next to him, that's when they made the leap. So I guess New York's thinking the same thing. They want one offensive guy, one defensive guy among their bigs. But they don't have the intensity that last year's team had. That was sort of a special team. But even still, those wings, they're in Brunson. I mean, Brunson's in Towns together. That's a tough combo to stop. So I am not confident about facing them. Indy, on the other hand, did reach the conference finals, got swept by Boston, but they were highly competitive in 3 of those 4 games. But they took it down a notch this year. I don't think they have the same, they lost their mojo a little bit. They look beatable to me. You kind of know who you got to stop. It's Siakam and Halliburton. Kind of the magic, part of their magic was they had these trio of guards, Halliburton, Andrew Nembhard, who you don't hear much about, and TJ McConnell. And McConnell really, him and Halliburton together, they're like the motor of that offense. But McConnell got hurt. He started showing up on the injury report in the middle of this year. I detect that he has not been the same, kind of becoming more ordinary, not the Energizer Bunny that he normally is. And again, that means they're weaker. So that's just my guess. But I would prefer to face Indy. I think against Indy, Detroit actually would have a legitimate chance of getting through them. Against New York, I'm a little bit more skeptical. Remember, too, at the beginning of the year, like the Pistons' worst loss of the year was against New York. They lost by like 40 on their home court.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I forgot about that. Yeah,
that was back in November.
But
they have a lot of good vets.
Back to your point about the Pacers of last season. Didn't the Pacers of last season win or come close to winning that NBA Cup, or am I making that up?
Yeah, I think you're right. They lost. Last year they reached the finals.
Yeah.
They had the number 2 offense last year. Number 1 was Boston, who set like a league record in efficiency, and Indy was in their shadows. It was almost identical numbers.
Yeah.
They were awesome last year. You couldn't stop them, but they made some changes. They let a few guys get away. They thought they had the bodies to replace them, but they just haven't quite been the same. They can put it together one night here, one night there, but not on a nightly basis as they did last year. So they look a little vulnerable to me.
We're talking with the NBA stats guru Siddy Hall here on the Knee Jerks. I'm Greg Eno from my WordPress blog, gregeno.substack, not WordPress, my Substack, gregeno.substack.com. And follow me on Twitter at Greg Eno and on Blue Sky at Greg Eno as well. Let's go to Nick Milanovich. What you got for Siddy Hall?
Actually, I wasn't thinking about the playoffs. One of the things that popped into my head is kind of the conversation around MVP for this year. And I have my Serbian bias in this one, but I wanted to get your thoughts on it.
Yeah, well, I don't spend a lot of time on X, but I think I did make a mention there. I did mention it last year. I like Shea. I'm a Gilgeous-Alexander guy. And, but, it's hard, which shade of blue do you prefer? Jokic or Shea? It's clearly one of those two. But the stats people love Jokic. He's pretty remarkable. I've talked last time I was here about impact scoring nights, and the two are the head of the class in a virtual tie. But I like, I think, Jokic. I am not a purist. I don't believe you have to go from exactly the beginning of the season to the end of the season, and it's only that. You can consider the fact that Jokic already has 3, and I thought he got his first one a little early. I thought that one should have gone to Giannis. So for that, as is often the case when when it's close, give it to the new guy. Shea's team has the best record in the league. It's a young team. He's their leader. He's been awesome. I think he's an underrated defender. And, he's my guy. What do you guys think?
Well, let me follow up with you with the there's a lot of controversy going around right now, Siddy, with the foul baiting, which SGA has pretty much become the poster child for it now. He's taken over from James Harden. And that was the game where the Pistons played OKC, and SGA's foul baiting essentially is what sent Bickerstaff over the edge. That was the game where he went into that, after the game where he went into that rant about officiating, because it's constantly, Shea is constantly the one to initiate contact, yet the defender is getting the call. And that's what set off Bickerstaff. So now there's this argument. I don't know if you've seen it online. If you spend any time on Twitter or Reddit or even like on YouTube, there's the ethical hoops versus the foul baiters. And essentially you have
cool.
you have the players who can score without flopping, such as Cade Cunningham, for example, or Kevin Durant's another one. And then you have your floppers, your foul baiters, as they're called, SGA, James Harden. Hell, you could even throw in LeBron James and that ilk in there. And there's a lot of talk out there is what is the better way to play basketball, or what's the more pleasant, what's the better game, I guess. And some people are saying, well, yeah, if they're going to call fouls, go all in on it. The point of the game is winning. But then you got the other half saying, but it's such an ugly, awful game to watch. I still hate watching James Harden play. I cannot stand his style of play, and I'm getting that point with SGA as well. So where do you fall, Siddy? Because this is also kind of wrapped up in the MVP argument as well, when you got Jokic, who's a more ethical player compared to SGA.
Yeah, see, now we're going to start arguing.
Good.
I agree with your original premise. I just call them cheaters. I hate the cheaters. Yeah. And to me, the leaders in that category are Joel Embiid, James Harden,
good. That's another good one. Yes.
Doncic.
Yep.
Those are your top 3. Always fine. I don't put Shea in that group. I've watched a lot of Shea. I don't think he's in that group. The guy's made out of rubber. He knows how to hang. He knows how to make adjustments, and he's a tough guard. So there's going to be contact. He leads the league in drives to the basket. So he's in a lot of those positions. He doesn't snap his head. I call them the head snappers, the guys that do this. Shea doesn't do that. And Jokic, he's a little bit of a crybaby. He's not on the.
I would call him. Yeah, he's a crybaby, not a flopper.
A little bit. He does. He exaggerates contact.
Yeah.
He's a big guy. Come on.
Yeah.
That's why I get irritated a little bit with him, because a guy of his size does not need to be doing that. But that he wants to sell it, especially like early in the game. He'll work on the refs in those first 3 minutes. If he can establish fouls early, that's going to open up space. He knows what he's doing. He cheats a little bit. But to me, I like Shea. I like how he goes to the rim and how he changes hands. He's very slithery, very rubbery, and that makes him a hard guard. So I'd have to look at it. I mean, no one's perfect in terms of not playing that game. But I don't feel like Shea's always got one eye on the ref. There are guys that do that, plenty, and it's super irritating.
We are talking NBA with Siddy Hall here in the Knee Jerks. Let's shift the focus back to the Pistons. They tripled their win total from last year. First team to ever do that, of course. And we had talked earlier about how they have done it without Jaden Ivey, who went down on January 1st. We don't know if he'll be back for the playoffs. JB says there could be a possibility. I don't know if that's realistic or not, especially for a team that may not survive the first round. But you mentioned the defense and how much it has improved and so forth. Is that is that a surprise to you, or did you think that this team always had that in them, but it just has only recently come out?
Well, when they drafted Ron Holland, one of my comments was, wow, the Pistons have a lot of guys that are 6'8".
Mm-hmm.
And like no one seems to know exactly how to design a great defense these days compared to the old days when they went Twin Towers.
Right.
But one of the ideas that seems accepted is the ability to rotate on defense, and it helps when everyone's kind of the same size and athletic.
Okay.
And that seems to be the magic height, right? You have Cade, Thompson, Holland, Beef Stew, Duren moves well for his size, so that and then the Tobias maybe he's at least that size. Right. So at least in theory, it looked like a team that might be was going to be better on defense than offense. That was my thinking. Whether they're going to be at this level, no, I wasn't expecting it. But, when Ron Holland stepped on the floor the first time, it was really obvious, man, this guy's just he's a mad dog. He really gets in your shirt and plays great defense. And we already knew that about Ausar Thompson. So there you go. No one's talking about Holland in terms of all rookie and in my mind, man, I don't know if there are many people I would trade him with. So, kudos to, drafting him with that 5 spot. That was a tough pick. It wasn't obvious who to take.
Yeah.
And at that 5 spot, the draft was flat. That was the perception, and the Pistons were trying to move back because they knew they believed Holland would be available at the 10 spot, but they couldn't make that move. Nobody wanted to move up and pay for that.
Yeah.
But Holland, he has the makings of being a great defender. And let me add to that. The top defense in the league by far has been Oklahoma City, and they've done it without traditional big men. Well, this year they got Hartenstein. But how do they do it? Rotations. They're the best man-to-man rotational defense in basketball. When they faced Boston at home earlier this year, the Celtics put up about 60 points in the first half, and then the second half they shot 8 for 40.
Jeez.
And it was just these guys, they just stay in your shirt. Everybody, you can't get loose. You're 28 feet from the basket and they're still in your shirt. That's how you do it now. It's hard. It's hard to have the energy and the right bodies, and maybe the Pistons have it. Beasley's kind of small. Sasser, he's small. But they find ways to come up with plays. Do
you think also will make first team all defense?
He missed a lot of games. They tend to. I don't know. There might be a rule about that. I think you got to play 65 games.
65 games and average 20 minutes.
I see.
For all awards, or is it just all NBA? I don't even.
No, I think it's all awards at this point. That's why Beef Stew is not going to be considered for any all defensive teams. He just doesn't play enough minutes.
Half the league's ineligible.
Yeah,
that's true.
Go ahead, Greg.
I was just going to say, Duren, remember about a year and a half ago, the fear about Duren was that he's got brittle ankles. He was going to be beset with ankle injuries all his career. And he mentioned earlier, Siddy, at the top of the discussion about how the Pistons have been able to stay relatively healthy. That includes Duren.
Yeah, he looks like the guy's built out of granite. He's been a surprise, because last year, entering the year, we kind of were thinking, okay, it's going to be Beef Stew next to Duren and then Tobias. How are they going to work that out?
Right.
But JB Bickerstaff had his own ideas. And he said, Jalen, first of all, you're not going to be that creative. A lot of us were wondering how much Jalen Duren could do. Can he put the ball on the floor? Can he develop a mid-range game? And, coach said, dude, you're dunking.
Yeah.
That's your game. You're grabbing rebounds and you're dunking the ball. And that's it. And then once in a while, once or twice a game, he'll shoot a little jump hook, and he's good at it. but he reduced his game. And his game is winning the battles next to the basket, and he's been awesome. Mm-hmm. And then you got him backing, and then you got Beef Stew backing up. So we've got this two-headed center, which I love. It's people don't notice this much, but quite often some of the most effective centers in the NBA, it's actually two centers that where you have two guys that back each other up. You get 48 minutes out of that position. And when you add those numbers up at the end of the night, they're there. They're good numbers. Yeah. They're all-star caliber numbers. Mm-hmm. And that's where the Pistons are right now. We're beating most teams out of the pivot.
Interesting. So they score a lot of points in the paint. There's no question about that. Let's bring Nick Milanovich back in the discussion. What you got for Siddy Hall?
Well, I was just kind of thinking about the Pistons. Unfortunately, I'm comparing them to last year and the year before. Whereas in addition to the defense, they just seem way more organized when they're setting up for a basket, because it used to be, let's hurry up to the basket, chuck a three, miss it, and then run back because the other team's got a rebound. And it didn't matter whether it was Dwayne Casey coaching them or it was Monty coaching them. They always seemed disorganized. Completely lost. It looks like a pickup game at a local park. So,
yeah, I mean, there's a lot to be said with this Piston offense. They know where they're supposed to be, and they know when they're supposed to shoot. And everybody on the floor can shoot it. When you're open, you're supposed to shoot it. Now the only exception to that is Ausar Thompson. And he has somehow managed to figure out a way to be effective without taking that shot. He drives, and he's got that extra step. He's got that quicker step that allows him, to play the old school way. Pistons play a lot of old school basketball. You got Thompson's drives. Cade prefers the mid range over the three ball. There's a lot of that with the Pistons. You have Duran and Stewart are inside. Beef Stew still launches threes a little bit, but he doesn't spend much time out there. So it's a good mix of old school, new school. But getting back to JB, he created an offense, a movement where the guys move. They know where to pass. They know where they're supposed to be. They know how to find each other. And it works. They come down, and they usually get a good shot off. That's a good offense if you get a good shot off. And if it goes in a lot, it's a great offense, right? So the Pistons, I mean, where are they? I wrote it down here. Offensively, they are 14th in the league after finishing 27th last year. They're 8th in defense after finishing 25th. So huge
25th
jump.
to 8th. Wow, that's amazing. Yeah.
JB,
Wow.
So with the Pistons, they are playing more of an old school kind of inside game, not, just sitting there launching threes.
Right.
So
yeah, Beasley has the green light, obviously.
Right.
He's just been spectacular.
Yeah.
But it's mostly about, hey, when you are open and you have that split second of freedom, if you're Fontecchio, if you're Ron Holland, if you're Schroeder, whoever you are, you're supposed to shoot the ball. Unless for some reason you're just not feeling it, and then you explore a little bit more. But, you don't want to take the shot clock down to 0. It's hard to make that many passes and, avoid turnovers, But they're just a real consistent team, on a nightly basis. They don't get blown out much.
That's true. Yeah.
They come at you.
You mentioned Fontecchio real quick, and I apologize if Nick's got a follow-up. We'll get to that in a second. But you mentioned Fontecchio, and I know he's been a little off. The fan base is not really particularly fond of him necessarily, but I get the feeling though, and maybe this is just me trying to cope. I get the feeling though that he could be an X factor in a playoff series. There's something about this guy that tells me he could go off Luke Walton style, like Luke did against the Pistons in Game 2 of the 2004 finals, and just do something unusually good that could help them win a basketball game in the playoffs. And I don't know if that's just me being delusional or if there's something to that.
I look at it this way. His numbers are definitely down.
Mm-hmm.
I talk about impact scoring nights.
Yeah.
He is a shooter. He's
Right.
only had 4 of them this year. That's a low
Mhm.
number for him.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, sometimes in basketball, either you like a guy or you don't.
Mm-hmm.
Me personally, I'm a Simone Fontecchio guy. I like him. Even if his shot's not dropping, I don't hold it against him. You leave him in here, you let him play. And the reason is because he's big. He's a big guy.
Yeah.
He can handle contact on defense. He can play like a big man. And when he's shooting his 3, that's a bonus.
Right.
I mean, he should be knocking it down more. He's not having a great year.
Yeah.
But, he's got a sneaky offensive game. He's developed this drive and pass offense that you're not expecting from him. He'll make a play that will surprise you. And that's great because that helps keep the offense from getting into a rut. You can't just expect Cade to be the focus on every play or option 2. You need different guys mixing it up, keeping the other team's defense a little bit off balance. And he's capable of doing that. So I like Simone. I don't have a problem with him. But, going back, though, remember last year I was complaining about the Pistons trading for him. They gave up the 32nd pick in the draft, plus a guy that they stashed in Europe, when they could have just signed Simone as a free agent without giving up anything. There was a risk that maybe some other team would beat them to the punch, but that 32nd pick, Utah, that's the Filipowski guy. You guys probably remember him. We're from Duke. He's been pretty good. That was a valuable pick to give up for Fontecchio when theoretically we could have had him without giving up that pick.
Nick, did you have a follow-up, or can we go to Al?
Yeah, we can go to Al.
Al, what you got?
Well, I think it's worth bringing up. You mentioned how J.B. Bickerstaff told Jalen Duren, "This is what you're doing. This is what you do best. We're going to concentrate on that." And I think he did the exact same thing with Isaiah Stewart. The Pistons, for his entire career, were trying to make him into a stretch big, and Bickerstaff said, "No, you're going to defend the rim." Like you said, he takes the occasional 3, but that's only because someone's left him wide open or it's at the end of the shot clock. And all of a sudden, now that they're allowing Isaiah Stewart to be the center that he is, even though he's undersized, he's having probably the best defensive year of his career. And I think stuff like that is what has made Bickerstaff. I would think he should be NBA Coach of the Year. Will he win it? I don't know, but the things he's done with this roster, identifying what his players do best and making sure that's what they're doing, is something we haven't seen from a coach in this town in the Pistons in years.
Well, regarding JB, I mean, he can't do a better job than what he's done this year. So, yeah, he deserves a Coach of the Year. But will he get it? There's always like 3 or 4 guys that are candidates. My suspicion is Kenny Atkinson in Cleveland will get it for elevating that team by 20 wins or so, around 20 wins I think. From 47 to like the mid 60s. I mean, no one saw that coming either. But anyway, regarding Beef Stew, he has a lot of those oh wow blocks. Every time he blocks a shot, it's almost like a shock to your system because it just comes out of nowhere and it's so defiant and so quick. And he slaps the shot into the glass, things like that. And almost by percentage, he must have as many highlight blocks as anyone in the league. Super impressive. And the way he knocks heads and the way he's a tough guy. To have that much muscle in the center position from him and Jalen it's quite an advantage. Nobody wants to play those guys, head to head. The other team's big. So they're annoying. They wear you out. I mean, did you guys see I hope, obviously you must have seen at least the highlights of that fight.
Oh, yeah.
That happened.
We watched it.
With against Minnesota. That was a very interesting game because Minnesota is old school. And there's another old school team, Orlando. The same thing happened earlier in the year where you have these real slow, sloggy games, and there's a lot of pushing and shoving, and the tempers start growing. Mm-hmm. And the Pistons play well in those situations. Mm-hmm. I think it's a great sign. They don't back down. They seem to. They have the right people.
Yeah.
You look at, Beef Stew entered the league with a chip on his shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
Alstar Thompson has it. Ron Holland has it in spades.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Jalen Duren, the way he's built, he's not as nasty as the other three, but obviously, he can take care of himself. And then in that fight, if you remember, that's as close as you can get to a brawl in the NBA. Mm-hmm. Right in the middle of all that was Marcus Sasser.
Yes. Yeah.
It was awesome. Pushing down on DiVincenzo and Naz Reid. It was an exciting moment, It was cool. And they had a nice lead in that game. It got away, but we've seen it twice this year. So, if the Pistons play New York, that's what we're going to see. They don't quite have as much. New York doesn't have grind as much as they did last year, but when you're talking about bloodbaths, I think the New York series has more potential. Indy, Detroit, Beef Stew had a beef with he got thrown out of a game with Indy not long ago. So there's a little bit of bad blood there, but Indy's more of a finesse team. I think a New York series could get a little more interesting in that regard.
Is there a distinctive difference, Siddy, in your mind in playoff basketball versus non-playoff basketball? They always talk about hockey being a different animal in the postseason. Is the NBA the same way in your mind?
A huge difference. It's a huge difference. The benches get shorter. You have just an 8 or 9 man rotation. You see the same guys in the same sets. Different subject. I'm not a best assessment man. I know. That change. But one byproduct of that is by the time you get to game 3, they're just grinding. Mm-hmm. It's a slog. It's different than the regular season NBA. These teams don't see each other much.
Right.
And they show up and they run around and shoot their layups and three-pointers. The NBA playoffs, definitely the defenses start to take over a little more. The scores are going to drop. Sometimes I think it frustrates me. I think it's too much. I don't want to see these guys play each other for 7 games, but whatever.
Are there fewer?
That's how it is. And
statistically, because I know that's where your wheelhouse is. Statistically, are there fewer possessions per team in the playoffs than there are in the regular season?
I don't have that data in front of me, and I really don't know. Just from observation, I assume that's what happens.
Uh-huh.
Again, the defenses know exactly what the offense is going to do. They've seen it for, especially as you get deeper into the series.
Right.
Game 1's like any regular season game.
Right.
Maybe game 2, but they get sick of each other. There's NBA's it's full contact.
Mm-hmm.
They play now more spread out, so you don't notice it as much, but they're allowed a lot of contact. So, the tempers can flare, people get especially when you got a Beef Stew in the middle of all that.
Right.
And Holland and, I would be surprised if there isn't some sort of quasi fisticuffs in the playoffs with the Pistons.
You said before we went on the air that you have come prepared with a little quiz, have some fun with us, with the Pistons, and I was wondering if you wanted to unveil that and let us have it.
Sure. I was thinking of that, something Nick said. I think I want to call this quiz the Piston Roulette.
Okay.
Because, the roulette wheel, who's a gambler here? How many options are there in a roulette wheel when you spin the wheel?
Depends how many zeros there are. Right? You got the 36 numbers, plus you got 0, and some of them have double 0 as well.
38 options, right? You throw the ball, let's see where you hope you get lucky. Well, this is a tough quiz. So there are 30 NBA teams. I'm going to ask you guys to take some guesses here. Your odds are 1 in 29. And so I'm not expecting you guys to get these, but I'm just curious to see if you can get lucky.
Okay.
I want to mention former Pistons who reappeared in the NBA this season on various clubs for cups of coffee, shall we say. So I'll name the player. And let's see if you can take turns guessing or just shout something out. I'll start with what I believe is the easiest or the least difficult, and that is Killian Hayes.
Brooklyn.
Brooklyn.
With Brooklyn, right.
All right, he had a 10-day contract. He started 5 games and was not asked to return.
After playing against the Pistons.
Oh, yeah, he was shown the door.
He actually, I had to, I talk a lot about, impact scoring nights. And off the top of my head, in 4 years with the Pistons, he only had 8. Just an abysmal number, given the amount of playing time he received.
Right. How often he handled the ball,
In 5 games with Brooklyn, he had 2. And it still was not enough for him to keep his job. So anyway, next one. All right, so you guys, let me mark the scorecard here. That was a win. That was a hit. Kevin Knox was signed to a deal. He is currently on that roster. Almost never. He doesn't play much, of course, but he is on a roster right now.
I'm guessing the Portland.
You're in the right region of the country.
Okay. I remember seeing him recently in a Piston game.
The Jazz? No.
Al, you feeling lucky?
Not at that area of the country. I guess I can't see the Supersonics. So
Not anymore.
I couldn't tell you. I didn't even know he came back. Be honest with you.
He's like deep in some bench,
teams
right?
that are located in that part.
I learned, if you're talking about the West Coast, is he like sitting on the bench with the Warriors?
That is correct.
Really? Oh my God!
Wow.
Hot hand Al, we're going to call you.
Nice.
All right. The next guy was a member of the during the James Wiseman period. Point guard Corey Joseph, who barely remained in the league last year and somehow landed this year again and is starting right now. He is a starting point guard in the NBA. He has started, I think, the last maybe 8 or 10 games.
Wizards?
His backcourt mate is a.
That's what I was going to say.
His backcourt mate is a former Piston. So it's a former Piston backcourt.
So who's on the bottom of the league then?
Spin the wheel. No, you're looking in the wrong place. It's not a bottom dweller.
Not a bottom.
Wow. Okay.
He's starting on a real team.
Not the Mavericks.
No. Good guess though. They needed bodies.
Well, they had other former Pistons on that team too.
Would be Houston then.
Well, the former teammate the former Piston is KCP.
Oh, yeah.
Who's by now has been
who's on a new team this year.
These guys I think he's played for all 29 teams at this point.
Basically. Yeah.
I don't remember where he is now. I thought
Atlanta? I don't know. Not Atlanta.
You're getting close.
Charlotte?
Oh, if we're getting close, it would be
not a bottom dweller.
Wouldn't be not the Pelicans.
The Orlando Magic.
Magic.
Yeah, that's right, because they lost a bunch of guys this year.
He and KCP are the backcourt. All right, the next one is one of the guys that Troy Weaver lunged for, Marvin Bagley.
Oh God!
He was moved. And he ended up in Washington, and they sent him packing at the trade deadline to complete a deal. And so he's on a new team. He's played 9 games, 65 minutes with that team, and it's a team that will make the playoffs.
That's a hum.
So who did Washington make a trade for? And just to help you out, the guy they received in the deal was
Milwaukee?
No, it's not Milwaukee, but the guy that Washington received in the deal was Marcus Smart.
Oh, geez, Smart.
Yeah.
So where was Marcus Smart prior to being dumped into Washington. 5, 4. Someone want to guess?
Lakers?
It is the Memphis Grizzlies.
Yeah.
Is now backing up Jaren Jackson Jr. All right. Well, Mr. 50-point man, Malachi, I can never say his name.
Malachi.
Yes.
Flynn.
He
Malachi.
played 4 teams for what future lottery team? High lottery. One of the high lottery teams. He played 4 games for them this year.
Okay, I'll throw the Pelicans.
That one is
out
Washington,
there.
isn't it?
Is it?
No and no.
No. Okay.
No.
Nick,
Okay, no on the Pelicans, no on the Bullets. All right.
The Bullets.
Well, he said Washington.
How old are you?
Old enough to remember when they were called the Bullets. Come on, Nick, throw something out there.
The only team I can think of is Charlotte.
That is correct.
Oh.
Charlotte Hornets. 4 games.
I thought Flynn was in the G League this year.
I'm sure he was. He was somewhere.
Yeah.
As is like half of the Pistons team from last year.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, remember someone posted online what the Pistons lineup looked like a year ago at this time. It's like, how did they even win any games?
Yeah.
With some of those lineups they were as bad as Monty was. That lineups they were throwing out there at the end of the year was literally worse than a G League team.
The worst in modern NBA history.
Yes.
They're just horrific.
Wow.
Okay, now this one, it's going to be a 2-part question. First, I want you to identify the player. Take a guess. During the Weaver era, he liked to lunge at former first rounders and give them kick tires.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
One of those guys was from year 1 of the Weaver era. And suddenly he appeared. He appeared this year for 1 game, for 3 minutes.
Oh, jeez.
Think back to year 1 of Weaver, former first-round pick, kicking the tires on someone.
Wow.
Yeah.
A very high lottery pick.
So it's someone he took. Or someone that was on the Pistons at one point.
Someone that was on the Pistons year 1.
But was it a Pistons draft pick?
That sounds like James Wiseman.
Yeah, good guess. Good guess.
I think he got hurt early in the season. He couldn't have played very much either. So.
Was it like
he also
was there something? No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
1 game. Yeah, Wiseman played 1 game this year.
Okay.
But this is a different big.
A different dud.
Not drafted by Detroit. Troy kicked the tires. He lasted a whole year at Detroit.
Sure he did.
The answer.
Yeah, go ahead.
No,
I was thinking. I'm trying to remember like a last name like Jackson or something like that is sticking in my head
Josh
here.
Jackson. Same
Yes.
Jaleel.
I get half credit for that one because I got the last name.
Who?
Josh Jackson.
No.
Trying to take credit here. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Siddy.
Now, okay. Again, another big, good old Taj Gibson.
Oh, Taj.
Part of that.
Yeah.
At the end of last year,
Yep.
the morale was so low they had to bring in the vet.
Right.
And I thought that might have been the end of the road for Taj, but no. He gained he got another
He's
year.
got to be like 36, 37 by now, isn't he?
He's turning 40 in June.
40. Oh my God.
Jesus.
Jeez.
It's his 16th year.
Wow.
He is on a roster right now.
That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing.
And again, we're thinking cellar dweller type team.
Yeah. Wow.
That's his specialty now.
Yeah.
Want to guess?
Hmm.
Think of bad teams. Don't be afraid. There are no bad guesses in this game.
Washington.
Lots of bad teams, yes.
Good guess, Nick. It's not Washington. Who else could it be?
Philly?
Toronto?
Charlotte.
Okay.
Charlotte Hornets. And what's interesting, this could be the end of the road for Taj. 4 games remaining in the season, and he has played 998 career games. I myself, I love when guys reach 1,000. So keep an eye on the box scores. See if Taj gets into 2 more games and hits 1,000 games before his 40th birthday, because that might be it, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, finally, I just want to mention there are 2 prominent former Pistons who have not played this year, who are not on NBA rosters. And we won't go through the whole guessing game, but it's worth mentioning. One is Christian Wood, who was recovering from a knee injury, and the Lakers let him go at the All-Star trading deadline and signed Alex Len. And Wood is just sitting out there now. He announced on X 3 weeks ago that he's ready. The other one that is just an amazing story when you think about it, it's Bogey. Bogey has not played in a game this year. He is a free agent. He was waived by Brooklyn. And when you think back to that moment when he was playing the best basketball of his career, and Troy Weaver did not pull the trigger on a trade, and then mothballed them, and they started the James Wiseman era. Since that time, he has played 57 games. He played an additional 29 with Detroit. He played 28 with New York, and now he's gone. I mean, who would have thought that, thinking back to how great he was with Detroit? And that was it. 57 more games. Done. Unless somehow he gets back on a roster next year, but he's sitting out there right now.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Isn't that something about Christian Wood, who puts up numbers? Teams look at the box scores he puts up, take him on, and then just can't wait to get rid of the guy. There's got to be something here toxic locker room with that guy, as he is a me first player, but he's one of those guys that seems like he's got $1 million talent and a 10-cent head.
Al, your behavior will either add or subtract 2 years to your career. And the rep on him is that he's not a good guy to have around for those reasons. Well, last year, there was, I can't remember the exact circumstances. They needed to insert a new big man, and they went with Jackson Hayes. And Wood went on social media and made some smart-ass comments that I'm sure were scrubbed but noticed. That's how you shorten your career. He seems like he'd be a great guy for the Lakers right now. He's a dunk threat, a lob threat. He shoots the three. He can score. And they said, no thanks. So there you go.
Wow. Well,
anyway, that's it. That's it.
Thank you for that.
A couple more, but we'll stop there. We don't need to get into Rick Rhoden or whatever his name is. No, Rick Rhoden was the baseball player.
And a better golfer, if I remember right.
He could have been a better basketball player than some of the guys we just mentioned. So.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, and there was one more, but I can't say his name, man. It's Tosan Evbuamwan or whatever.
Okay.
Gesundheit.
He is with Brooklyn, so these guys did resurface.
Quick prediction, regardless of who they play in the first round, can the Pistons win a series, or are you looking at just maybe a 6-game struggle?
I think they can beat Indiana. I think they will lose to New York. That's my prediction.
Okay, fair enough.
All right.
Again, Indiana will be a war. It'll be a big battle. Could go 7. So, going to be very competitive. Less optimistic with New York.
And I think I said this last time you were on, and it's still true. I think the Pistons have, at the very least, as many road victories as home victories, if not more. They've been very good on the road, and so that might bode well as well in the playoffs. They don't seem to be afraid to play on the road.
They play with emotion, right? In the road crowd. I mean, I guess they react to it. They use the energy to their benefit.
Did you see Beef Stew pointing to the Detroit in the front of his jersey when he got kicked out of Minnesota?
Oh yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah,
they're very demonstrative. They're an easy team to like, right? You got Beasley's yelling when he's knocking down his threes, doing his shimmy, and they're fun, right? They get into the game. They're kind of they're young bucks that. let's just say they're not starry-eyed.
Right. That's a good one. You're right. They're not. Absolutely not, for sure. I mean, they've taken down Boston this year. They've taken down the Knicks. They've taken down Cleveland. They gave Oklahoma City really good games, at least the one in Detroit, and hung with them pretty good in OKC, and they faltered in the fourth quarter. But, yeah, you're right. Not starry-eyed is a great description. That's absolutely true. Siddy Hall's here. Thanks so much. We appreciate it. We'll bring it back. Hey, who knows? If they win us a first-round series, we might bring it back to talk about round 2.
Yeah, well, I'm here. Give me a call.
We'll either say we told you so, or you'll rub our nose in it. One or the other. So.
All right. Anyway, thank you so much, guys. I enjoyed it.
All right. Thank you, Siddy.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Take care.
Right, thanks, Siddy.
All right.
Siddy Hall. Yeah, that was good. Always good. And who could have thought that we would, way back in when we had him on at the beginning of the year, that we would be talking playoffs here in April. Yeah. Unbelievable. But we are. That's great. Good stuff. We already have the birthday game taken care of, so I guess we can go right into the.
There's a lot going on. It took me a while to put together the show notes, but obviously I figured we would run along with Siddy as we always do, so we went an hour with him. So let's start what's going on with the Tigers, specifically because there was some breaking news today about what exactly. I'll just get right to it. Yes, I'll get right to it as soon as I bring it up in my notes here, because it's kind of long and involved. Last Thursday, Tigers assistant GM Sam Menzin resigned with no real reason given. Yeah. In his statement, he said he wanted to, quote, spend time with my family.
Oh, God.
And that was it. And as Greg astutely pointed out when we were texting about this earlier, there was next to nothing about this in the local papers. I believe the Detroit News had something behind their paywall, so I don't subscribe to the news, so I have no idea what it was covered. And I could not find a lick of anything in the free press. It was covered somewhat like in The Athletic, and so some of the blogs like Bless You Boys had it. But there was no details. It was just like, it was such weird timing to quit in the first 2 weeks of the regular season. And there was a lot of speculation. Well, maybe the bulk of his job was over since these guys do so much more in the off season. Maybe he was telling, but no one knew. Well, it came out today. The Athletic, Cody Stavenhagen is a very good beat writer with the Athletic, covers the Tigers. The Athletic reported today that Menzin quit before he was fired. Team officials did not specify Menzin's conduct, but the Athletic spoke to 2 former Tiger female employees who said Menzin sent them unsolicited lewd photos via Snapchat. I would say also known as probably Bret Favre sending a dick pic, essentially. Unsolicited. Both women said they received unsolicited photos from Menzin on several occasions dating back to 2017.
Oh, jeez.
Which would probably go back to around when he joined the team, because if I remember right, he was hired by Al Avila to help upgrade the front office, get them into get them an analytics department, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
An HR official for the Tigers, and this is from the Athletic. The title is Compliance and Investigation Business Partner. That's the title of this HR person. Was in contact with the women as recently as last week, inquiring if they had received lewd photos. In response to the questions about Menzin, the team released the statement saying, upon being made aware of the allegations as to Sam Menzin's conduct, the club promptly completed an investigation. Before the club could terminate Mr. Menzin, he resigned. This type of behavior is contrary to our standards and has absolutely no place in our organization. We have a positive and safe culture for our colleagues. Apparently you don't, and we'll continue to emphasize respect, inclusion, and professionalism. And that's where we stand as of now, and Sam Menzin's career as a baseball executive is probably over after this. But it says volumes about a couple things. It says volumes about the lack of decent coverage in the city about all the teams. And going back to some of the other things that have been broken by national writers or not by the local newspapers.
Right.
But the thing is that it's been going on for 7 years, almost 8 years. We're now in 2025, and it took this long for this to finally come out. And it doesn't. If it takes that long for someone sending dick pics to people, you don't have an organization that has a positive and safe culture, especially for women. So, I mean, great. The guy's gone. He was going to get fired, and so he bailed. But it says bad things about the organization. What other things could be swept under the carpet in the organization, and also the fact that, as you guys mentioned in our text, that something very similar happened at the University of Michigan with a football coach or going through people's personal information to find lewd shit. And he's going to serve time for what he did. And now we have this, and this is the sort of crap that seems to run rampant in high level sports. That there really seems to be too many men who work at that level who feel like they have free reign to sexually harass women, and it's awful. I really don't know what more to say. But this really should. The Tigers are saying what the Tigers are saying in their statement can't be true because of what just happened.
Well, I'm back to what you said at the top of the discussion about why we're finding this. And you're right about Corey, by the way. Yeah, Cody. He's a very good reporter. But why are we not? Why is this in the Athletic?
Yeah.
And not and I we've been it seems like we talk about that. It seems like these kind of things happen. Now, when I say these kinds of things, I don't mean a sexual thing like this. I mean stories happen. It seems like that we as fans and we as other media people are finding out about not via the news of the Free Press, and it's weird. I and it's not just baseball. It's not just. It seems like I don't get it. I don't understand it. Maybe I'm just old school. Maybe reporting has changed over the years, but I still the bottom line is it's not right. I'm not trying to make how we found out a bigger story than it happened, but it does make you wonder why something of this magnitude is just it just gets this kind of. I don't know. It wasn't reported, and I don't.
Just for a second, Rick, I just checked the Free Press.
Yeah,
they did finally post something about it. It went live about 4:45 this afternoon, and it's like a very short article written by Jeff Seidel, a columnist.
Yeah, right.
And the whole thing is essentially what the Athletic reported.
Of course, it is.
That's all it is. Just so they can throw something out there for the algorithm, essentially. So if people who are searching for it will actually, the Free Press wrote about it, but then the whole article is the Athletics reporting, and that's sorry for papers like the Detroit News and the Free Press. It really is.
But at the same time, though, Al, I guess you can flip it around and say, and I think you maybe alluded to it, you can flip it around and say that's true.
Yeah.
So it may be a sad commentary on the local reporting, but it's also a very positive reflection on the Athletic.
Oh, very much so. Yes. Mm-hmm. And they are worth the money I pay for a subscription.
Yeah, me too.
Well,
me too.
Yeah. But regardless of all that, the fact that it's that this was going on in the Tigers front office for 8 years. Unchecked, apparently. It's like, what the hell's going on there? And the fact that women who worked in that office did not feel comfortable enough or safe enough or were scared for their jobs to actually report it.
Right.
So, this, and if this is, and it was interesting that this really feels like, this is another of Al Avila's hires, and most of the guys that have been canned over the past few years, they pretty much cleaned house of most of the guys he had brought in, and this was one of Avila's hires. So we can't blame Scott Harris for this, but I think you could blame that it wasn't found sooner by any of the regimes that the Tigers have had as of late. And that's the main thing.
So this guy was actually with the Tigers even longer than that. I thought he was an intern when Dombrowski was still there.
Yeah,
so he was.
10
plus years.
Right. Yeah, he didn't get an official position until 2017, I believe, or a little earlier than that. Yeah.
And that's where he took over with like all the analytics, setting
exactly.
All that
Exactly.
Can you imagine being 34 years old? I think he's 34. 34 or something like that. He's in his 30s. Can you imagine being in your 30s and having a job like that in big league baseball, and now you
pissing it away. Yeah.
Right. And like you said, there's no one's going to hire him. No one is going to hire this guy. Not in baseball anyway. I don't know what he's going to do.
Yeah.
But imagine being in your mid-30s and looking at, your professional life completely in shambles over, something so ridiculous. And I don't know why. You know what? I know it's Snapchat. Snapchat is, for people who don't know, is a forum or a platform, I should say, where photos get automatically deleted, which is why people use Snapchat for that reason.
Yeah.
Not that you can't screenshot something, of course.
Exactly. Yeah.
But why these guys feel like they could? Wasn't there also Al and Nick? Wasn't there the GM for the Mets? Didn't he get into some trouble about 4 or 5 years ago? The GM for the Mets got into trouble with something like this. I don't know if it was sending dick pics or was. I have to look it up. He was the general manager of the New York Mets. Got into trouble. About 5 or 6 years ago. Let me see here. It was Bill. Was it not Billy Epler? Was it Billy? Not Billy Epler. Former Mets GM Jared Porter. This is 2021. Acknowledged sending explicit images to female reporters when he worked for the Cubs, and he was hired by I don't think he was the GM of the Mets for very long, and he got, of course, fired from that job. It just. Oh God!
And Nick, you're right. I just double checked here, and Menzin had been with the Tigers since 2012 as an intern.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then he moved into baseball operations about 3-4 years after that. So but you're right.
Oh.
So this is a guy who's been there since Dombrowski.
Right.
And then he finally, when he felt safe enough that he had a high enough, he was high enough in the hierarchy, he felt like he could start sexually harassing the women in the goddamn office. I just personally, I'm old. I'm 63 years old. I just don't get the sending dick pic thing. Like, Bret Favre. Bret Favre should have been booted out of the goddamn league for some of the shit he did, and that was one of the main things he was doing. I just don't get how men think women want to see this, especially unsolicited.
Right.
It just blows my mind that they have this kind of mindset that they can get away with this stuff. I've been in long-term relationships. I've never sent a dick pic. It makes no sense to me. And yet here you got a guy who doesn't even, who isn't in a relationship with these women and is firing off shots of his cock to them. It blows my mind every time I see this stuff.
Yeah, I don't get it.
So with Bret Favre, I just got to say, he's not the sharpest knife in the drawer.
You're right about that.
Yeah.
So I have very, very low expectations of him using any brain cell that.
And didn't Favre also do some sort of misappropriation of funds with some charity or something?
Yeah, it involved taking Mississippi welfare.
Yeah.
Redirecting money from Mississippi welfare that was meant for welfare recipients, and it went towards building volleyball courts and shit at I think at University of Mississippi.
Yeah.
It's several $1 million.
Stuff.
Yeah, since that one's still tied up in the courts right now.
So,
but he's supposedly supposed to repay it.
What's surprising me with this one is literally that this started 8 years ago.
Yeah.
Does that mean the first complaints were 8 years ago? And if it was 8 years ago, that's a really long frickin' time to sit on this and do nothing, basically.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions people need to ask about this as to when did you know? This has been going on for 8 years, and yet this is just now coming out? Well, has he been doing this the entire? There's a ton of shit that the Tigers need to answer. They probably won't, but Nick Snake is a good point. This has been going on the entire time. Was this little secret that that the women in the Tigers' office knew about and weren't talking about? Or I don't know. It just blows my mind. It got to this point.
We haven't heard anything either about the Craig Monroe situation since that broke.
But he was not an employee of the Tigers.
No, I get it. No,
right.
I'm not. No, I know. I'm just saying that speaking of things untoward, Craig Monroe situation, it just kind of evaporated. I'm not sure what's going on with that.
I think one of those things, like if we stop talking about it, it goes away, and we stop putting him on the air, and people stop asking about it.
Yeah,
and I think because he was essentially a contracted employee.
Yeah.
And but yeah, that's another one where,
what happened?
Stuff came.
Mateen Cleaves got into some trouble too. I remember. Wasn't he accused of rape or something, or sexual assault? Mateen Cleaves.
I think you're right about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know what. I don't know what the.
He went to. He was accused, and I think he might have even been
rape or sexual assault. One of the two.
Wasn't he?
I'm sorry.
I think it was rape. Actually, I think it was actually rape.
I want to say it happened in Flint, which is his hometown, of course. Yeah,
I mean, it happened in Michigan, somewhere in Michigan. For
I
sure.
think it was in Flint.
Okay.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
I just looked it up. He was acquitted on all charges.
Cleaves?
Yeah, in 2019.
Okay.
So, but yeah, he was acquitted.
Okay. Well,
But it's
fair and square, I guess.
But he has a history. So yeah, it's. But yeah, again, it says volumes how men who get to this level in sports feel like it can have free reign over women.
Yeah.
With no repercussions.
Right.
Until they get the repercussions. But yeah, it shouldn't take 8 years or however long he was doing this shit. All right. With that, let's move on to more positive topics about the Tigers because they're now 6-4. They beat the Yankees this afternoon. I believe it was 6-2. I think it was the final today. They as of recording, the Tigers own a 1.5 game lead over the Royals. They are 6-4, the only AL Central team over 500 at the moment. And honestly, it's like once they got away from Chavez regime and those Dodgers, the Tigers have been playing some very good baseball, essentially. But they also, I think it's safe to say, they're beating teams they should beat. Obviously the Yankees are a very good team, and they did at least take one so far from them on a horribly cold day. But the team itself is, there's been some early surprises, and I know this is all small sample sizes. And honestly, you could even argue that even if this continues for half a season, that'd still be considered a small sample size in a way. But thanks to the oblique injury to Gleyber Torres, Colt Keith had to move back to second base, and he has been awful at second base. He made a brutal error today. He got 2 errors on one play, with bobbling the ground ball and throwing it away. It allowed for the Yankees' second run. But that meant Spencer Torkelson is now playing first base every day again. And before today's game, he has a 1.057 OPS. He did go 0 for 4 today. And obviously he has unsustainable batting average of balls in play on 4.74. But it is worth knowing, guys, that so far the changes that he made in his batting stance, he did change his batting stance and in his approach to the game because he's actually balls he was letting go by him last year because that was the thing on Torque. It seemed like he was letting balls go through the meat of the strike zone.
Yeah,
and he wasn't swinging just because he was looking for a certain pitch, or was too patient. I think it was with him. But so far, the approach he's taking right now is working very well. Hopefully, it continues. But again, small sample size stuff. But if you're going to have a team that's going to win a division, you need to have some guys you didn't expect to step up. And so far, Torkelson has. But I'm not sold on it yet. I don't know about you guys, but I am definitely, this is still buyer beware, let's wait and see, the small sample size, whatever. So far, so good, but let's see if we're still talking about Torkelson the same way 3 months from now.
Well, I mean, it's good to see. You mentioned the approach, the game-winning hit he had Sunday against the White Sox, where he laid off that first pitch slider, and then the pitcher had to come in and Torque said it after the game, the post-game interview. He said, all the pressure's on him. There was, bases were loaded, the one-run game, a base hit wins the game. All he had to do was hit a single, and that Leisure had to come in. He had to come in, especially falling behind 1-0. Torque did not bite on the down and away slider. Got a pitch he was able to drive, and that's great. But I'm still Torque aside, and that's great. I'm still this defense. I'm telling you, this defense is going to come back and bite the Tigers. They're winning some games now, despite their defense. Literally, despite their defense. and they're giving up way too many 4 and 5 out innings. You mentioned Keith. There's been a lot of, and here's the other thing about defense. It's not just about errors. It's about misplaying balls that don't even count as errors. They may show up in very fancy schmancy metrics that show up on people's tablets. But as far as like real raw numbers like errors and fielding percentage, it doesn't show up. And they're still defensively challenged. They're not a good defensive team. And you can get away with that in short little, clumps of games. But over the course of a long stretch, and with all these guys, again, moving around the diamond, Keith, you talked about Torkelson back at first base. They're just a hodgepodge. And I know some of that's injuries, and that's fine. I get that. But I'm telling you, this defense is not championship quality defense. And unless it gets better, they're out there booting balls and kicking it around and throwing it around. And they've been able to overcome it for the most part. They're 6-4. They've won 6 out of the last 7 games. But they've not. It's not like they're flashing leather out there and winning games defensively. They're winning games offensively, believe it or not. Their defense is just not. It's not good. It's not.
Yeah, I'll admit I have not watched their games. My usual habit, just to be clear, my habit with baseball is kind of let April just go, and it's hard to read like what's going to happen later on in the season, and it's just kind of been my habit to let things start warming up and getting into May to see where all the where everything settles for the games. So I haven't watched much. I'm glad that they kind of recovered from the beatdown in LA. I will say that they've had trouble with defense for years now. Yeah. And that's always concerning because there's a much lower ceiling if you have a lousy defense in baseball. You always have to have strong defense, particularly. It's known to be the case for your defense up the middle. So from catcher to second base and center field to be really strong. Yeah. But, they haven't had great defense for a long time, and it's hurt them. So.
All right, we have Greg back. He disappeared for about 30 seconds
I lost
there.
Connection for whatever you saw about that guy.
Yeah.
That's no problem. But, it's but defensively, what's interesting, though, at least there's one player who seems to have accepted his platoon role and looks like he's going to be playing all over the field. That's Javi Baez. Yeah, and he's played in 7 games now as of today, and he's played center field, third base, and shortstop. And he's been productive at the plate so far, but he made an absolutely jaw-dropping defensive play today. Where it was a hard ground ball where Holton reached up, tipped it. Javi was already on the move, the shortstop. He's still on the second base for the play. He was able to reach down, stab the deflected ball, and then in the same move, then flip the ball out of his glove to second base where they were able to turn the double play. And that's the kind of stuff that the defense this team needs, because who knows what happens with the Yankees if the Yankees come back and do it and rally somewhat, because if Baez isn't able to make that play, but that says volumes to do, I think, about Baez as a player, and that how people have hated his offense and think he's overpaid, but he still seems to do anything and everything the team asked of him. And there's a lot of players. Well, look at Gleyber Torres. The Tigers would probably be much better served, as things stand, when he comes back if he goes to third base. But Torres refuses to play there. He says, I signed as a second baseman. He's going to play second base, which now means the Tigers really will have to mix and match with, say if Torkelson stays in the lineup between Torres and, between Torres and Keith and Torkelson and whoever else is involved with this platooning. So for as much hate as Javi Baez has gotten, he seems somewhat rejuvenated after having recovered from that offseason hip surgery.
Well, one thing I've always said about Javi is that when they brought him in, he was supposed to be the guy, the missing piece. Yeah. Okay, he was right. They needed a shortstop. Okay, they got a shortstop. They had that year in 2021 where they kind of flirted with being around 500, and they came out in the second half of the season, and they kind of surprised people a little bit, and things looked rosy and looked like they were turning the corner on the rebuild and so forth. They bring in Javi, and here's a veteran guy, and blah, blah, blah. Even though the Mets and Cubs fans were saying, for the love of God, no. The Tigers signed him anyway. And I always said, though, that if they could put a team, or if they could just if he could be like not the main guy, but kind of an oh by the way guy, and kind of be in the background. And I feel like that's what's happening now. Like his presence in the lineup isn't make or break. I don't think. I mean, it's not like, oh my God, what are we going to do without Javi? But I feel like the more you de-emphasize his presence on the team, whether it's deliberately de-emphasizing it or subconsciously de-emphasizing it, the better he either looks or really is. Because I feel like maybe that's better for him too. Look what happened last year. He went down. This is funny. He went down with an injury almost at the exact same time the Tigers went on that 31-9 run. If you look back at it, Javi went down almost the same time, almost immediately. When he went down, the team, I'm not saying there was a cause and effect there. I'm just saying that they were able to do all that without him. Okay.
Yeah.
So now I'm thinking, well, I guess what I'm saying is that anything that they get out of this guy now is almost gravy, because I don't think they really were going into the season thinking that they got to have a great year from Baez to contend. I think Baez now has been reduced to, if he's good, that's just extra icing on the cake. If he's not, well, that's okay. We can get along without him. I just think, which I think this is which I always thought was going to happen, is that his value to the team was going to be amplified the less you pay attention to him, if that makes any sense.
Oh yeah, if you just got to take the salary out of it completely at this point. That's all you can do. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, so you take the pressure off.
Yeah, basically.
Of Javi to perform as the go-to guy, because you pay him a ton of money, versus everybody else. So
correct.
Yeah, and for that matter, it also takes pressure off of Sweeney not having to be the everyday shortstop, where now you can kind of platoon him, and he's been playing pretty darn good this year as well. His bat has been much better this year compared to how it was in the last couple months of last year when he was the full-time shortstop. I mean, this team has a lot of guys who are best served if you pick and choose when and where they play. Like Sweeney and Baez, and hell, you can even say the same thing about Torkelson, a catcher. Now, the catcher's a pure platoon thing now with the Tigers. And they have a lot of, it really is, this team has been built to be, and much of it's forced because of the injuries, because, there are a couple guys who, like when Meadows and Vierling come back, they aren't coming out of the lineup. But even still, they have a lot of Swiss Army knife type players that, and if you pick and choose when and how you use them, they can be very, very effective, like Ibanez. And he hit a home run today. He hit a 3-run dinger today. As long as you,
they're going to have a lot of guys, Al. They're going to have a lot of guys that finish the season with between 300 and 400 at bats. That's what they're going to have. A lot of I bet you they have 7 or 8 guys that are going to finish with about 350 at bats.
Yeah,
because of exactly what you said. Now, is it a winning recipe? I don't know, but that's what's going to happen. You're right. You could be cynical and say, well, that's because if you've got a lot of guys who are doing that, who are the way you very eloquently put it is. The way you phrased it was like a lot of guys where you can pick and choose where you put them, which is a kind way of saying maybe you don't have a lot of really good big league ball players that can play 120 games, but if you can squeeze, and Siddy made a point earlier in the NBA discussion. He said he loves the Pistons center position because at any given night you get 48 solid minutes out of that position, even though it's by committee. Yeah. Well, if you can throw together 8 guys who have 350 at bats, but yet combined, the whole thing about the sum is greater than the whatever that. I always get that wrong. The sum is greater than the parts or whatever. If you can do that,
the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, or something.
There you go. If you can,
of course, the scientist would get it right. So
if you can do that over 162 games, God bless you. But I don't know. Maybe you could in that division. Because that division is back to being lousy again.
Yeah.
So now that you're saying this, It's about it. This is now taking AJ Hinch's chaos approach to the pitching staff last year and extending it to the offense, because the only thing Scott Harris can find is shit out of a dumpster for players to fill up the roster. So now
essentially,
so now AJ Hinch has to not only juggle a bunch of relievers to that he's disguising as starters, and going through like 5 or 6 of these guys in the rotation in one night, but now he's also just platooning a bunch of what do you call it? Utility. They're not utility guys. They're maybe a little bit better than that, but not
that's
particularly stellar, right? They're not all-star.
Well, but the thing is, though, there is a history of using platoons and being successful with them. Errol Weaver did that for years, with players, and I remember Sparky Anderson doing the same thing. He made Champ Summers look like an all-star those couple years he was with the Tigers, because he only played against he never saw a left-handed pitcher ever. Right. As long as you only played him against certain pitchers, right-handed pitchers, the guy was goals for 25 home runs, especially if they had short porch. So if you use these guys, who may not, if you get 600 at bats, they're going to get exposed. You give them 350 at bats that you pick and choose, you might get 2 more out of them. And that's a win in my book.
That could work for a long season where some of the bad games sort of get buried and lost. Yeah,
exactly.
It may not be great for a short series.
Yeah,
because you got
to get there first.
Guys. Yeah. So, and you're talking about Sparky Anderson, the guy who put an all right-handed lineup against left-handed pitchers and lost every time. Yeah. So,
and would always walk. What's his name? George, the third baseman of the Royals.
Right.
George, he would. No matter the situation, bases would be loaded. He would walk George Brett. So I'm not going to let that man beat me, even though if it means a run.
It seemed like every time Sparky unintentionally walked a guy, the next guy hit a home run. It seems like every single time.
Yeah.
It didn't, but it seemed like.
But I guess it's also worth noting a couple things, and moving on here. Casey Mize is finally starting to pitch like a guy who was a 1-1 pick. Yep. I mean, he pitched great today. He's now 2-0 for .77 ERA, .94 WHIP, and 11.5 innings. 11.2 innings, I should say. Yeah. Which has kind of stepped up because Tariq Skubal's off to a slow start with a 5.91 ERA and 10.2 innings pitched. But, again, early sample sizes and stuff. But Mize was showing this in spring training, and now it's starting to carry over into the regular season. And again, like Nick said, it's not. We're not going to see pitching chaos because they look like they have a pretty damn deep pitching staff. The chaos is going to be in the everyday lineup now because their starting rotation, I think you could easily say, is the best in the AL Central.
I'd be comfortable making that assertion.
Yeah, I think it's a safe thing to say.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, they're for the most part they're all young guys. You've got a nice mix of young veterans, which I would consider Skubal to be and Flaherty to be. Olsen and Mize and who's the fifth guy? Olsen, Mize, Skubal, Flaherty. There's Skubal, Flaherty, Olsen,
Mize, and Job.
Job,
the rookie,
who's really young,
who has been very up and down, but that's to be expected.
Yeah, and I got to tell, I'm really glad to see that the Tigers putting Job in the rotation. I think that is. I think that's great. I think that is something that, we all, there were a lot of eyebrows raised when they brought Job in for the playoffs. Peach fuzz faced kid, and they threw him in high leverage situations, especially in Houston. I remember. In playoffs, and you can't. Again, that's that mad genius of AJ Hinch. And now they put him in the rotation. I love that. I mean, they don't bury him in the bullpen. They don't need him in the bullpen. They got a lot of good arms in the bullpen. He's kind of wasted there. I like him taking a turn every 5 days, learning how to be a starting pitcher in big league baseball. He doesn't have to be great because, to your point, Al, they've got a lot of other good pitchers in the rotation. He doesn't have to be a Cy Young guy. He just has to give them maybe 150 good innings. Give him a chance to win every day, and he doesn't have to be great. I love it. The one guy they got to get rid of though is Maeda. They got to pull the plug on the Maeda experiment.
Yeah,
is over. It's over.
Yeah, if there was one guy I could see them eating his contract rather than Javi Baez's right now.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But okay, well, now we've talked. Let's move on. It's getting kind of low on time. I got to ask you guys, what's your thoughts on the torpedo bats? That's become the latest controversy in Major League Baseball. Where the Yankees. Well, I guess these kind of bats have been floating around a little bit, but the Yankees, use those, as Greg called them, the fancy numbers on tablets, and figured out if you move the meat of the bat down some, especially for guys who hit the ball more on the label, and then you just move the meat of the bat down there. You don't change the diameter or anything. You just change the shape a little bit. Guys are going to get good wood more often, and it seems to be working. But, of course, it became news because the Yankees had that 9-home run game, which is an outlier no matter what. But, hey, I'm all for, stuff like that. I think it's kind of cool. If you can't have aluminum bats, why can't you, at least have torpedo bats? But, yeah, I would just say this. When it comes to baseball, for too many years, the advantage had shifted to pitching. Right. Because of you have bullpens that have nothing but guys throwing 100 miles an hour with 3,000 spin rate on their damn curveballs, and they're just eating guys up. And you're limiting your starters only 2 times through the lineup.
Right.
So I think I have no problem with guys trying to find a little bit more of an advantage on offense. And if the bat's perfectly legal, I'm all for it. And I hope baseball doesn't make it illegal. I think it met every letter of the rule. Every letter of the rule. So I don't see the controversy, but there's always going to be old heads who, just because the bat looks funny, they're not going to like it.
I don't have any problem with it. I mean, it fits within the current rules, so it looks a little different. So the weight's a little distributed a little bit differently. Yeah. So what? And usually things that favor offense have always and disadvantage pitchers is the way baseball's rules tend to go.
In all sports, sports favor the offense. All
right.
Yeah.
Sure.
Good
exactly.
point. Yep.
And in baseball, they make significant changes when the pitchers start dominating, like lowering the level of the mound.
Lowering the mound in 69, yeah.
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 Even the distance between the mound and home plate was changed back in like the late 1800s. It used to be closer. And so they moved it back farther to disadvantage the pitchers. So, that's been going on forever in baseball. But there's nothing, fine, let them use a different type of bat.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any issue with that. Anybody that wants it, it's within the rules. It's not like the aluminum bats, which kind of suck. And it's a different animal. But so what? Like some people want to just keep things the same like they were back in the 1970s. Like, give me a break. Just let's.
Yeah, exactly.
I would actually rather them hit for average again versus watch so many fucking strikeouts. But
right.
If there's anything to go back to, but not worried. I'm not worried about the bat. So what?
Yeah, I agree.
All right, and we also should touch on. The Pirates shooting themselves in the foot and literally emptying a clip when they removed the Roberto Clemente logo from the right field wall at PNC Park and replaced it with a beer ad.
What?
Yes. Didn't you hear about that?
No.
Yes. No. For the last few years, they've had a Roberto Clemente's number and a little logo out there honoring him. Obviously, because he played there for 20 years, Hall of Famer, died a hero.
Yeah.
And they literally replaced it with a beer ad. And then the Pirates released a statement, Greg, saying, well, that logo wasn't supposed to be permanent. It would be like the Tigers saying, well, we had to remove Ty Cobb's name so we could make a room for a pizza ad. Yeah. But today, there was a lot of public shaming about this, and the Pirates admitted they fucked up and they reinstated the sign. But the fact that they thought they could get away with it and people wouldn't notice. People are up in arms here in Detroit over they removed the Tigers on the top of the scoreboard and replaced it with Comerica, which put another ad in the goddamn place. But it just goes. It's just this stuff is just more of the Major League Baseball owners are this sheltered little clique of old white men who have no clue sometimes as to the things they do to make an extra dime. I mean, how much money are they getting from a freaking beer ad on a wall? It couldn't, it would make like 0.0001% of their budget, and yet they felt that was something they needed to do so they could get that little bit of extra money. These owners need to realize, they own the team, but in many ways they're a caretaker of the team, and the team is really belongs to the fans, and this is just another sign of that.
Oh, I didn't know. That sounds like a jerk of the week. Really, that's nuts.
Yeah, I thought of this before either. One of the things I'll say about this is, it's always a bad move for a team to somehow shit on their best players in the team's history.
How about what I was talking about there with Joe Schmidt last year?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, the lines are dicks about this all the time. Getting the stupid lawsuit with Megatron and then bonuses back, and it's just it's an ugly look.
I know.
And the Pirates, considering how much success they've had in the last 45 plus years, can't. Nothing.
The last time they were good was when Jim Leland was there, for Christ's sake.
Yeah.
So, they can't afford to like shit on their history any more than they have already. I think actually, if I'm not mistaken, it's the Pirates. Whoever is like the most recent owner, who I think took over the team the last couple of years, is really a miser. I don't know how else to put it. Like a super miser. He's not gonna, he or she, whoever the hell it is not gonna pay anything to field a good team, which tells me they're just kind of like pinching pennies, and so it doesn't surprise me that they want to put a beer ad in there for more revenue, even no matter how much it gets. So I feel bad for anybody who's a Pirates fan, because that owner is really shitting on them.
Well, one of the things that was illuminated, I know probably is not on Al's. We're probably not talking.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Agenda, but
no, we can't. We can't deviate.
When the Tigers were in L.A.
Throughout
the season was, and I saw it all over Tigers Reddit as the Tigers were being swept. Was that there should be a salary cap in baseball? That the Dodgers have made a mockery of the game by how deep their pockets are, and how they're fielding essentially a roster that's got 4 or 5 probably future Hall of Famers on it, and the other teams just can't compete, and that the gap between the haves and the have-nots in baseball, because there's no salary cap or ceiling as far as that goes, or floor or ceiling, has created now this wide disparity. If the White Sox or the Pirates played the Dodgers 20 times, I bet you the Dodgers would win 18 of those games. Okay, and really, and there's the disparity between the haves and the have-nots in big league baseball now, because of how deep the pockets are of the Dodgers and the Yankees, usual suspects, and teams like what Nick is talking about with the Pirates and the White Sox and the A's, of course, is really getting to the point where fans are starting to get a little bit annoyed by it, and I get it. I mean, we were all around in the salad days where the Red Wings were winning 4 Stanley Cups in 11 years, and they were doing it largely based on, homegrown talent, but also by bringing in veteran free agents. Always July 1 was always Christmas Day in Detroit. July 1 was always the big day. They'd sign some big name free agent every July 1st, because they had these deep pockets. There was no salary cap in hockey at the time, and Ken Howland could go out there with checkbook in hand and sign whoever he wanted. And that's one of the reasons why that 2002 team that won the Cup had Luke Robitaille and Brett Hall and Shanahan and Eisman and Larionov and on, Hasek, because they had the deep pockets, and we were able to enjoy that as hockey fans. But now in baseball, there's there's clamoring that there needs to be, which I don't know that they'll ever get a salary cap passed by the Players Association, but there needs to be some sort of something that reins these teams in, because the Dodgers are just, their payroll is like $350 million or something like that.
Yeah. I actually wish we still didn't have a salary cap in hockey, to be honest, because I can't stand watching this shitty hockey.
Yeah.
I hate salary caps, period. I don't like them at all. And all it is just it's artificially lowering salaries. That's all it does.
I think the bigger problem probably isn't the teams like the Dodgers; it's the teams like the Pirates.
Yeah,
That won't spend. I think the teams that won't spend, I think, are more of a scourge on the game than the teams that will.
Yeah, you don't need a salary cap; you need better owners.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when you got teams like the owners, look at the ownership in Pittsburgh, ownership with the Sacramento A's now, or what's going on in Tampa. You have essentially minor league owners with major league franchises. Yeah. What's going on with the A's is absolutely shameful. There's no way the Athletics should be playing in a minor league park in Sacramento.
Well,
that's absolutely ridiculous.
The Rays are playing, and that's probably because of nature, but aren't they playing in the Yankees?
Yeah, they're playing at George Steinbrenner Stadium.
Training park?
In spring training park. And there is this whole year.
Yeah.
But there is some mitigating circumstances with that. But their stadium situation in Tampa is an absolute train wreck, and it's almost all because of ownership trying to wring Tampa St. Pete for every single bit of public funding they can get. And people are like, no more of this. You're a billionaire. Finance it. You can afford it.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Oh, God. Yeah. Don't get me going. Don't get any of us going on ownership. And the fact that there are still fans out there that take sides with ownership in these kinds of disputes is what is even more shameful to me. Because they're absolutely clueless. Because ownership only sees us as dollar signs, as we saw what Pittsburgh did with that logo. Fans won't care. Let's sell beer. Oh, good Lord. Yeah. Okay, speaking of, we're talking about big ass money and contracts and caps. Did you see the contract extension that Vlad Guerrero got today? $500 million, 14 years.
Yeah,
$500 million, 14 years, average annual value of 35.7. And unlike the Dodgers stuff, none of it's deferred. That contract is going to be ugly. What? Vlad Guerrero Jr., great hitter, but he's a first baseman. So that immediately lowers the value of him. 2, he's a big guy. He gives me Prince Fielder vibes. That contract is going to look real ugly, I think, at about the time he turns 32, 33.
Yeah.
No, he's 26 now. So, and that's a 14-year deal. They'll be lucky to get half of that of him being a top 10 hitter.
I thought we were kind of past those contracts, Al. I thought those were kind of dying on the vine. I didn't think we would see that anymore or anything. Yeah. I didn't think so. I really didn't think so. I thought those days were gone, but I guess not. Yeah,
well, I think what's gone is this is the old school one where there's no deferment. That's where I think that's the difference. Like Max Scherzer a few years ago when he signed his big deal with Washington, most of that was deferred. That guy's going to be getting paid until his 50s, much like Ohtani. But there's guys I would give big money to more than likely.
Yeah.
Vlad, I would pay. I would pay Vlad $400 million over 7 or something like that. That's what gets me. The players want these to be as long as possible, but baseball-wise, you'd be better off giving him $50 million a year and then cut the deal in half, and you might have a productive player for the majority of the contract. They're not going to have a productive player 10 years from now, and that contract's 14. Oh my God!
Look at he's going to be getting that money up until he's 40, right?
Yep. So he's 40.
Look at a guy like Mike.
It's kind of like Miggy's contract.
Yeah.
Look at a guy like
Mike Trout. He's in his early 30s and can't stay healthy.
Right. Just bingo. That's exactly what I was going to say. Mike Trout, who didn't give off vibes
Yeah,
that he was
that he
gonna
would
be
break
an
down.
injury-prone- right.
Yep.
He was going to be an injury-prone player. He really did, because the way he just didn't. You know, the way he was built and the way he kept in shape and so forth,
Yeah.
and the way he played baseball, you didn't get the feeling that he was going to be. And like you said, he's 33 years old. Last year he only played in 29 games. The year before that he played in 82. The year before that he played in 119. The year before that he played in 30. The guy has played. This is Mike Trout.
Yeah.
Since 2021, I'm not going to count the COVID year. 2021, these are the games played from Trout. 36, 119, 82, 29.
Yeah.
That's what the Angels have gotten out of that contract from Trout. And and look at this is a guy who was stealing 30 bases a year. Here's his stolen base total since then. 2, 1, 2, and 6.
Yeah. Yeah,
He's this
is a guy you could argue was better than Miguel Cabrera when Cabrera was winning MVPs.
And this just goes along. Yes, this just goes along with the whole. The Angels have been that franchise. I swear that franchise has been absolutely. They've been cursed. They've lost a lot of players that have died in the history of their franchise. They've lost a lot of. It's been a weird franchise. The Angels, it really has been.
Yeah.
And why Trout? And I wrote about this when it happened. Why he hitched his wagon to the Angels when he was a free agent 5 or 6 years ago, when he could have gone back to his hometown, which is basically Philadelphia. He's officially New Jersey, but he's right outside of Philadelphia. He could have gone to the Phillies and been. You think he's big now? If he would have gone to the Phillies. Now I know that was before he became injury prone. I understand that, but if he would have gone to the Phillies, he would have been on TV all the time. Nobody sees Trout play. Nobody sees Mike Trout play. Now you don't see him because he never plays. But even when he was playing, you didn't see him play because he was playing out west. Teams stink. The Angels absolutely stink every single year, and they're never in contention. Never. He's played in 3 playoff games since he's been a big leaguer, and that was a 3-game sweep in 2014. The guy, I don't know what he saw in the Angels. He had a chance to get out of Dodge, sign with his hometown team, the Phillies, be a god there.
Yeah.
And but now he's back in anonymity with the Angels, and he's a shell of the play. He'll never be what he was before. Never.
Yeah. Yep. And that's why if I'm the Tigers, I'm doing everything I can possible to lock up someone like Riley Green up right now. If I'm Riley Green, though, I just see what Vlad got.
Yeah.
I'm not signing. I'm waiting until I'm hitting free agency.
Right.
Or right before free agency.
Same with Skubal. Skubal's not going to. He's not going
to. Yes.
An extension?
No way Skubal is going to sign an extension at this point. It'd be insane for him to do so when you see the money that does get thrown around out there to lesser players.
Right.
And Vlad Guerrero, great hitter.
Yeah.
But in the big scheme of things, I would say Riley Green is more valuable because he can actually run, throw, and catch, along with it. And he's having a great offensive year, start to the year so far. But but this is but I'm like Vlad Guerrero. If you can get that deal, more power to you. But I just wish there were more teams out there that would say, I'll give you that $400 million, but I'll give it to you over 7 years. These 14, 15-year contracts are absolutely ridiculous because you're going to have, as you just said, Greg, you're going to have a shell of a player for the last half of that deal if you're lucky. As you said, it could happen sooner than that, like we've seen with Mike Trout. So it's the money is mind-boggling, but I'm still on the player's side on this. This is just,
Oh yeah.
And we're going to have a lockout or we're going to have a strike. You know what's going to happen because of stuff like this. My money's on a lockout. The ownership is going to demand a salary cap. Players are going to say no, and then we're going to miss who knows how much baseball because of it. You know what's going to happen when it does.
Yeah.
So.
Yep.
Yeah, I know. All right. What more is there to say about the Red Wings other than they pretty much have to win every game from here on out? They have a must-win game against Montreal, who are they 6 points behind right now for the final wild card. So that is what it is. But let's touch on a little bit of Ovechkin, who set the record. And Greg wrote about this, which great timing, Greg. There's an all-time new top goal scorer in the NHL. The Capitals' Alex Ovechkin now holds the NHL record. It's not the overall record, as you wrote today, for career goals with 895. He passed Wayne Gretzky. Gretzky, of course, still holds the likely untouchable NHL records of assists and points. 1,963 assists and 2,857 points. But I don't know what to really make of this. I never thought someone would break Gretzky's record, and Ovechkin has managed to stay a very effective goal scorer till, he's 40 years old now? So that fact, yeah. Would I call him a good overall player? No, he's a one-dimensional guy now. No, what else would we expect him to be at this age? He's a sniper, essentially. Yeah, sure. So, yeah, I mean, it's wonderful that someone set the record. Ovechkin, I find him to be very problematic as a person. Specifically, he's a Putin supporter, big-time Putin supporter. But it's worth, like you said, it's worth noting that, yeah, if you factor in the WHL, which I forgot that Gretzky spent 2 years in the WHL to start his career, if you factor that in, well, Ovechkin still got some work to do. Yeah. Now, why don't you bring up what you wrote about today about all this? Because the WHL was a needed competitor for the NHL, and it did spur expansion, and they did take in some of the teams. But you were very correct in calling it was a minor league team. When you have 45-year-old Gordie Howe dominating on offense, it says volumes about the quality of the hockey.
Yeah, the WHA is a strange part of hockey history because of the timing of the league from 72 to 79. It ended up employing a lot of, and I wrote this in my piece today. Yeah. It ended up employing a lot of players who were at the back ends of their NHL careers, to be kind. Yeah. And also that were bench warmers or second or third line players in the NHL, even in the prime, who went to the WHA and became 30, 40 goal scorers. Now, some of these guys went back to the NHL and went back to be players. Howe, for example, scored 174 goals in the WHA. He played in the WHA for 6 years, so he averaged almost 30 goals a year in his mid to late 40s. Okay, so that's first sign that something's wrong. Taking nothing away from Gordie, but when you come out of retirement at age 45, which is what Gordie did, to play with his kids in Houston, and score 31 goals and get 100 points right off the bat as a 45-year-old, something is wrong. I'm sorry, something's wrong. So you had a lot of guys like that. Davey Keon, Bobby Hull, Frank Mahovlich, a lot of players who went to the WHA who were in the mid to late 30s and still continue to put up pretty good numbers. Why? Because the competition wasn't very good. The goalies weren't as good. The other players on the ice weren't as good. So Gordie has the record, and that's what you're seeing in every news story right now, is the distinction between Ovechkin's record now, 895, and Gordie's record of professional hockey of 975 goals. Okay. Why? Because Gordie scored 174, like I said, in the WHA. But having said all that, when Gordie came back to the NHL in 1979 after the merger, he was 51 years old, 51, I say, and he played all 80 games, every single one of them for the Hartford Whalers that year, scored 15 goals, which ain't bad for a 51-year-old guy, and ended up with 801. So Gordie came back and proved that, okay, you want to denigrate the WHA? Well, I'm going to come back to the NHL at age 51 and score 15. That's not bad. Okay, but the point holds. My point holds. The WHA was an inferior league, so it's problematic when you factor in Gordie's 100. I know nobody wants to hear that in Detroit. But when you factor in those goals, it may be moot because Ovi's got about 80. He's got to score 81 more goals to pass that record. Now, could he do it? I'm not sure how many more years he plans on playing. Right. He could probably, if he played 2 or 3 more years, he could probably do it, and then the discussion is moot. But if he doesn't do that and finishes with less than 975, I still maintain you can call him the greatest. Well, you can in the NHL, the greatest goal scorer, but I think you could call him the greatest goal scorer, period, even though he wouldn't have as many goals as Gordie, because I think Gordie's 174 goals on the WHA should come with an asterisk. Nobody wants to hear that in Detroit. I get it. But you can't tell me the WHA was as good of a league as the NHL. It wasn't.
Hmm. Yeah, without a doubt. Without a doubt. And it's it was something I completely forgot about that you wrote about was the Michigan Stags existed.
Yeah.
I don't know if I ever even knew that.
Yeah, they were here for what, half a season, or a little more than half a season.
Yeah,
but that's how bad things were for the WHA. That in Hockey Mad Michigan, they couldn't make a team go. Essentially, the only teams that ultimately survived were the ones in Canada, which really showed that they were an underserved country in the NHL. They only had Montreal and Toronto, ignoring anything west of Toronto.
Right.
So, but yeah, when it comes to Ovechkin, hell of a player, had a hell of a career, kind of problematic, but I think you make a good point, Greg. I think you could call him the greatest goal scorer, period, at this point, over Gordie Howe. But no, I think Nick was making some points when we started recording that, it's kind of hard to even make declarations about this because, Ovechkin had more opportunities to score with overtimes and things like that. But then Gretzky played against goalies who essentially were next to no padding. And now you got goalies today that look like brick walls.
Right.
Yep.
It's true.
So, yeah. So I don't know, but it's nice. I just it was something to pay attention to hockey because I really don't want to talk much about the Wings at this point because what's to talk about with them here other than Todd McClellan has been hinting that Dylan Larkin's hurt because he has essentially disappeared. He's gone 8 games without a goal, and McKellen has said that he is. The words he used that he's playing through. He says he's dinged up and he's pushing through. So it really sounds like Dylan Larkin got hurt in the Four Nations, and he hasn't been the same player since.
No, he hasn't. Nor has Lucas Raymond. Raymond's another guy. But here they're doing it. They're doing it again, though. They're starting to put together some wins. It's gonna be. It's not gonna be
too enough. Little, too late. Yeah,
it's not gonna be enough. They're starting to put together some wins. They beat a good Florida team yesterday. They beat Carolina the other night. They're doing it again with these late season push that's going to come down to the last couple. They're going to be eliminated on the last or second to last day of the season again. And everybody's going to say, "Oh, woe is the Red Wings. Why did they go in that tailspin in March?" Which they do every single year, and it's a problem. It is a big time problem. I'm not sure if there's something going on between the ears or what, but they got to fix that because that's 4 years in a row now where they've gone in the tank right around the end of February, beginning of March, and it's not good. That's not a good pattern to have.
Yeah.
This 2-game win streak is the first time they won 2 games in a row since sometime in February.
I believe it. Yeah.
So, and for a team that fancies themselves the playoff contender, that says volumes right there. Nailed it.
No, it's something with that roster. It's off.
Yeah, it is.
So.
It is.
Well, speaking of off, I think we need to take off pretty soon. So I guess that means it's time for a jerk of the week. So, Nick, who's your jerk?
I'm going to stay local with the jerk of the week. Well, local to you guys. And I will go with Rod Wood of Detroit Lions, the Detroit Lions president. He had some really tone-deaf comments related to the increase in ticket prices for the Lions. And saying he does not hear any complaints this year for the raising of the prices. So as far as I could piece together, Detroit Lions last season had the most expensive average per ticket price of $254 per ticket.
Wow.
And it was like $11 more expensive than the next highest ticket prices, which was the Raiders with $243. And the lowest ticket prices in the league, just to give you a reference point, was the New Orleans Saints with $43 per average ticket price.
Yeah.
So as far as and apparently the Lions are going to increase their tickets by 24% this year over last year. And apparently they increased the prices 30% from the year previous to that.
Yeah.
So if my math is right, the average ticket price for a Lions game will be around $315 a year. And supposedly Rod Woods' the only complaints he's ever heard were from the guys that were buying tickets to resell them. And he was saying, well, those guys aren't going to make their thousands of dollars. And so they're complaining, and we have the right to take those tickets back. Well, fuck you, Rod Wood, whatever the hell your name is. And for that, I mean, talk about gouging fans. I mean, just like absolutely gouging fans. Think about it, $250 per ticket. You want to take a family of 4? Now we're talking $1,000. On top of parking, the shitty food you get, the watered down beer, and all that other stuff. That's insane. And he doesn't hear any complaints, probably because he said, I don't want to hear the complaints. They're going to complain about it. I don't want to hear it. So screw him. My jerk of the week is Rod Wood.
Yes, not the Rolling Stones guitarist. That's Ron Wood.
Ron Wood.
Yeah, yes, exactly. No, that's a good one. That kind of slipped under our radar, Nick, about the wild price increases of the season ticket holders that are dealing with right now.
Oh, it's just insane.
Yeah, it is. Mr. Eno, who's your jerk?
Okay, I'm going to give you an analogy. Imagine yourselves in a kitchen and imagine yourselves making pancakes. Or putting together pancake batter. You've got a bowl. You pour in the powdered mix, and then you pour in the milk, and you beat it, mix it up together, and realize, it's too thin. The batter's too thin. So you add a little bit more dried mix. You mix it up. It's too thick now. So now you add some more milk, and you continue to do that. Milk mix, because you can't get it right. That's what the NFL is doing with the kickoffs. And I'm so tired of the NFL every year messing with the kickoffs. Now, I know when they first started doing this kickoff thing, they were concerned about player safety. That was the reasoning way back when they first started monkeying with the kickoffs. We were doing it for player safety. Now, I don't know if there was ever, and I don't recall there being any data that showed where kickoffs were you were any more at risk of being injured on a kickoff than you were in a regular play from scrimmage. I don't know. First of all, there's only a few kickoffs per game anyway. Secondly, I don't understand how the injury factor could have been so great, any more so than regular scrimmage play. The 125, 130 scrimmage plays in an NFL game and maybe 5 kickoffs. I don't know where they get the fact that those 5 plays were more physically perilous for players than the other 130 scrimmage plays, but they decided they were going to start messing with the kickoff, changing where the ball was being placed for the kick, changing the rules of a touchback, what yard line comes out from. Then they did this goofy thing last year where the kicker's a million miles away, and the return coverage team is practically in the red zone, and they did all these goofy things you'd see in the XFL. Okay, and then they're doing it again. They're trying to monkey with the kickoff. They're trying to get it just right because they want to have return. They want to have their cake and eat it too. They want to have returns. But they want to have them safely done. Safely done. So the Canadian Football League, I'm not sure if you guys know this, the Canadian Football League has a rule that says if you now granted the Canadian Football League end zone is like 25 yards deep, I get it.
Right.
Canadian Football League rules say that if you don't return a kickoff, either at all, or you can't get it out of your own end zone, the other team, the kicking team, gets a point. It's called a rouge. The other team gets a point. Okay.
Yeah, and that goes for, I think, any missed kick as well for punts and also extra field goal. Yeah.
Now you can as a receiving team, you can concede the rouge and just not even return it, and then you get the ball at the 35-yard line. You concede the rouge. Okay. I'm wondering if the NFL, since they're so playing mad scientist with the kickoffs, they wouldn't consider something like that if you don't return it, the other team gets a point. I know they won't do that because that's way out of the NFL's way of thinking. But these constant tweaks to the kickoff where it's different every year, literally. Almost every year there's a different. It's almost like, what's the kickoff rule for 2025? It's almost like how the new cars come out, the 2025 model. Here's the 2025 model of the NFL kickoff. Do you like it? We'll see. If you don't like it, fine, because we're going to come out with another model in 2026. I can guarantee you the NFL kickoff in 2026 won't be the same as you see this year, which wasn't the same as you saw last year, which wasn't the same as you saw in 2023. So the NFL continues to monkey with the kickoff rule, and I'm tired of it. So the NFL is my jerk of the week.
Yeah, it's exhausting at this point if all the rules changes. It really is. You know, I do agree with some of them, and yeah, they probably did need to fix kickoffs somehow. Yeah, but what they're doing right now isn't working because you know what? Teams are just going to continue to kick out the end zone. Right. 5 yards is not a big deal. Yeah, it was. It really was. So yeah, there's. But you're right about the NFL. They're always using player safety as a reason for stuff. They could give a shit about player safety. They, if they cared about player safety, well, we wouldn't have professional football. So,
Right.
So.
It's true.
All right, my jerk of the week, I wasn't sure where I was going to go. I almost went with Stephen A. Smith, who tweeted yesterday that he was comparing a Florida guard. You know, it was the Final Four was this weekend, and he was comparing a Florida guard to star Detroit Pistons guard Wade Cunningham.
Wade.
Yeah, called him Wade Cunningham.
Oh, no.
And I think the tweet is still live at this point. And the thing is, it can't be I doubt it's a typo because W and C are way apart on the keyboard.
Yeah.
So, who knows? But
Wade
Cunningham. Yeah, that's the only other thing I can think of. But
yeah, it could be autocorrect. It could be autocorrect.
yeah, but still, I like the idea of Stephen A. Smith not knowing what the hell he's talking about instead. I prefer that.
Right,
And seeing as how much ESPN throws him out there, I'm surprised he doesn't screw up even more often. Because they're asking him to comment on stuff he knows nothing. Stephen A. Smith knows jack shit about football. He's a basketball guy. Yeah, he's on our screens.
Now they've got him. Now that he's going up against Sean Hannity, it's on Fox. They just debate politics.
Oh yeah, he's hinted around at running for president. For Christ's sake. Yeah, he fancies himself a intellectual pundit when essentially he's a once a basketball journalist who now is a shock jock is what he is. But no, I'm going to go for another ESPN shock jock, and I'm going to go with Pat McAfee and his as my jerk of the week. I don't know if you heard about he's involved in a lawsuit now. Earlier this year, I don't know if there was a rumor thrown out there about an Ole Miss 18-year-old student was supposedly in a menage a trois with the father of Mississippi's quarterback. And it was all fabricated. None of it was true. Yeah.
Okay.
But McAfee threw it all out there. He always would say allegedly, thinking, I'm just saying allegedly.
Like you have a jail-free card, yeah.
Yeah. The thing is, though, he put enough information out there, like which sorority it was and things like that she was involved with, that it made very easy for SEC shitheads. You know what college football fans can be like, to find who she was. And so they found out she did interview with The Athletic, a few other outlets, and now she's suing places like Barstool, who also reported, I'm using quotes here, this rumor, and Pat McAfee, who blasted it out to millions of people on his ESPN show.
Yeah.
So, it just goes to show that, remember when ESPN actually had journalists on the air? Yeah. Or guys who had experience in saying, we don't have the facts, maybe we better not report this yet until we have more confirmation. Yep. And now you have guys like McAfee and Stephen A. Smith just spewing bullshit everywhere, and 18-year-old college girls who have to take online classes now for all the abuse they've gotten from people in real life over this manufactured rumor that got that exploded because of the likes of McAfee. There's a reason why the only time I ever watch ESPN anymore is just for the sporting events period, because they have ruined sports discourse with guys like Smith and McAfee and his ilk. And and Fox is just as bad. The crap. The hell, they got Colin Cowherd, and they gave skip a damn bully pulpit for decades. So, yeah. So my jerk of the week, I would just not McAfee and all of his ilk, who just say so much stuff and don't care about who gets caught up and hurt in the wake of the stuff they're talking about. The dirt, essentially. Right. Especially when they have absolutely nothing to back it up other than, I saw name, number on some rando on Twitter with a handle of name, number reposting.
Good for that, whoever's bringing that lawsuit then, because there needs to be some accountability for this stuff.
Yeah. And I hope they take them to the cleaners. I really, really do. Mm-hmm. Because the last, things like Barstool and McAfee, they have lowered the sports discourse into the gutter. So, all right, with that, let's get the hell out of here. This has been a long show. So, I guess first off, Greg, why don't you tell us what we have going on? Where people can find our social media and all that fun stuff. Anything else we may have coming up?
Well, first of all, thank you to Siddy Hall for his expertise. We love talking to Siddy about basketball. He knows so much about it, and we're very happy when he's here to talk about it. Mm-hmm. Al might talk to you in a little bit here about April 21st, because I have a feeling we may not be doing a show, or maybe late. I'm not sure. So I'm not gonna promise you that we'll even have a guest next time. Follow me on Twitter at Greg Eno. Follow me on Blue Sky at Greg Eno. Please subscribe to my Substack, gregeno.substack.com. I'll be in your inbox every Monday. Thanks to my lovely wife Sharon for putting up with this nonsense, and midnight so gosh darn fun.
All right. Greg is there. He is. He stopped moving there for a second. All right, Nick. Please let everybody know where they can find you online.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter and on Blue Sky, and usually if I'm commenting on anything, it tends to be Detroit sports. So find me and continue the conversation.
Yep, and of course the links to all this stuff will be in our show notes, which are of course at thekneejerks.net. But as always, again, thank you to you guys for putting up with the shenanigans we do every 2 weeks. And also, going by the schedule, I just had my calendar up, I'm going to be out of town for about 6 weeks. Middle of next week, I'm headed to Florida, as my parents have sold their place. They bought a place closer to my sister. So I'm going to help with that, get them settled into their new place. So I'll be there, and then right after that, we're going back up to Traverse City. So I think our next episode, because I'll be in Florida on the 21st, so I believe the next time we may be able to actually talk will probably be May 5th. That's the way, which would put us back on our normal schedule, other than I will be in our cabin doing it rather than doing it from my living room. So, so that's the way things are looking. All right. Okay. And of course, please, we would love it if you would like, share, or subscribe to the Knee Jerks podcast. You can find us pretty much anywhere podcasts are found, including Apple Podcasts, YouTube Music, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Amazon Music, Deezer, Radio Public, Ghana, and of course our homepage, thekneejerks.net. Let me throw that out there again. And of course, we also live stream video of every show. Goes to two places, YouTube and Twitch. All you gotta do is for the Knee Jerks on either one, and you could subscribe to the podcast on YouTube or Twitch and watch the live video, or watch a replay of the video. If you like watching our faces, you can watch it over and over and over for, at least on Twitch for about 3 weeks, but YouTube in perpetuity. It's a scary thought. All right, with that, let's get the hell out of here. So I guess, guys, we'll see everybody a month from now, thanks to my world travels. Yep. So until that time, we'll probably have lots to talk about when it comes to the Pistons in the playoffs. The Tigers will be a month into the season and have the NFL draft, I think, right about that point as well. Yep. So there should be plenty. And the Red Wings, well, probably Steve Yzerman will have given a postmortem by then. So until that time, this is Al Beaton saying good evening, good luck, and aloha, along with Nick Milanovich.
Good night, guys.
And Mr. Out of Bounds himself, Greg Eno.
Ciao, everybody. We'll see you in 4 weeks.